This is the type of thing where geologists would walk around, look at the rocks, make the observations and record them, and then take them back to the office using some rock samples, some other sort of geophysical techniques to synthesize, work up all of the data that would result in what we think of the potential that this area would have for containing copper. So we're in an exposure along a road where you can see that there's this greenish blue colored material. That's where the copper is, contained within a zone that might be 1 to 2 inches thick. So the rock that this copper is within, as you can see, it's localized here, but not necessarily outside of the rock. And so this could be the upper expression of a large copper deposit that a geologist would consider as a potential for an open pit. As an example of a typical technique that we do in the field is we come across a rock like this. You can see there's this darker brown streak. We scratch it, use our finger, and then we do what we call a smudge test. So if I want to contrast that with material outside of that dark zone, and as you can clearly see, there's two different colors that represent the amount of iron, and it's indicative of a process that helps us understand the potential for copper mineralization at depth. So a geologist will walk around this entire area making these kinds of observations, look at it at a map, consider what all of that means, and then think about proposing a drilling program that would ascertain the potential to evaluate a target. We then bring the drill rig in, who by the drilling process will produce a cylinder of rock that looks like this. So this is a typical thing a geologist will do to see the rock better, is to wet it. And you can see that brings the texture in the rock out a lot more clear, that we can make determinations of what its mineralogy, alteration, and significance are.
So as a senior geologist at the mine, some of the requirements to become a senior geologist is getting a lot of science and math in high school and college to get my degree. I actually did not like science in high school, so I only took a few years of it and went on to college thinking I was going to get a business degree. But as I was taking science classes, because as a general requirement, I learned real quickly I loved science. And so I actually got my degree in geology and teaching geology, and then I got my master's in geology as well. So, I enjoy solving puzzles. And to me, geology is like a big puzzle and mystery. You have to put pieces together out in the field and figure out what happened here, where could all the copper and ore be, and how do we get it out of there and find a place, mine it so that it's we can use it in everyday equipment, and like your belt buckles and your cell phones and your cars. And so the journey of just getting the math and science, I actually wish I had done more science in high school to get to college, because that would have helped me a little bit. But I really enjoyed the math and science behind it, and that's one of the reasons why I went into geology, is I enjoyed the science behind it and learning about the rocks.
So I didn't really know that I wanted to become a mining engineer or any type of engineer until probably my senior year of high school. When I started looking at colleges, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I had a really good physics teacher in my junior and senior year of high school, and he kind of helped me to find out that I liked that I liked math, I liked science, and I wanted to do things where I'd have to develop that mindset of thinking like a scientist or a mathematician. We did a lot of experiments in his class where we'd have to design the experiment and then go out and do it, collect our own data. So that kind of gave me an introduction to thinking like an engineer and kind of thinking in that mindset. So then as I started looking at different kinds of engineering, I wanted something too where I wasn't gonna have to sit behind a desk all day, where I could get out in the field and see what I was actually working on, see what my designs were actually doing. And so that's kind of what put me on the path to becoming a mining engineer. Like Michelle said, we're maybe at our desks half the day, and the rest of the time we're out in the field making sure that everything's working the way that it should. And really all throughout college, I just graduated. I graduated from the University of Arizona in December, and I've just been working at Miami since the beginning of February. So just over 2 months I've been here, and it's been great so far. But all throughout college, the math classes and the science classes were challenging. They were probably some of the hardest classes that I had to take, but it was a good challenge, and it was a challenge that I enjoyed. I enjoyed learning about physics and how our world works, and it's something where, you know, maybe I'm not doing the hard math and the hard science every day, but what I learned there still carries over, and those concepts are things I'm using every day when I'm out in the mine. So that's kind of how I got to where I am, and I don't know, we have questions now?
Sure. So one student asked, is there some special technology or equipment that you wear when you're in the mine?
So I think one thing is we use GPS in the mine, especially when we're trying to survey holes, because we need to know the exact location of where these assays are. And so we have a Trimble unit, so we go out and actually survey in using the global positioning system to figure out where it is on the earth and where it is in our pit. And so that's one part of equipment we use.
I have some equipment that I use to watch the slopes. I have 2 radar systems that are pretty advanced technology, really. And it's a radar, just like a radar that you'd use, that like airports use to keep track of airplanes, and it measures how fast the walls are moving. And as far as the equipment we carry with us, we don't really have any high-tech stuff. Safety is a big focus in mining.
Yep.
So we have hard hats and those bright reflective vests that you see construction workers wearing. You know, we always wear those when we're out, but we don't have any high-tech technology that we carry with us, but we do have high technology that we use every day.
It's kind of neat, but in the haul trucks, they actually have technology where they watch the haul truck driver's eyes, so that if they get sleepy at any moment, it alerts the driver by shaking his seat a little bit and notifies dispatch. So they know that, you know, this person needs maybe have a break or needs to stop for a moment. And so I think that's an interesting piece of technology also that, again, goes back to safety that we have in our pit. And so I think kind of a neat technology there.
So a student wants to know, when you get the minerals out of the mine, what happens to them?
So
what is that process?
At our mine, we have what's called a mine for leach operation. So what that means is that we take the minerals, and we don't. The only processing that we do is once they're blasted, they're pretty crushed up and a lot smaller sizes, is probably about as big as a piece you would find after it's been blasted. We take that and we dump it in a big pile, and there's a sulfuric acid solution that we apply to the mineral.
Yeah.
And because of the chemistry of the minerals and the chemistry of the sulfuric acid, the acid will stick, or the metals will stick to the acid. And as the acid drains through what's called the leach pad, then we collect that solution at the bottom, and then we're able to further process it and pull the metals out of that sulfuric acid solution. You can probably add more to that.
Just that it goes through a process of copper plating so they can get the copper out at the tank house. And so it's just another process of getting the mineral out so that it can be used in other places. Yeah.
This question is about what classes should a student focus on to become a mining engineer?
So for mining engineering, any type of engineering, all the math and science that you can take, the better. In high school, it's going to be a lot easier. In college, if you get a good base in high school. I had a really good calculus teacher in high school and a really good physics teacher. And what I learned in those classes, probably the most valuable thing I learned was how to learn, kind of the process of how to study and what's important, how to take notes. That's the biggest thing I learned from my math and science classes in high school, and that helped me so much when I got to the university and started taking classes, and you're in a room with 300 people, and once you know how to take notes, that becomes a lot easier. But math and science, the more you can get, the better. You're never going to be able to get too much of that for mining engineering.
I encourage a lot of people to go take a science or a math at a community college also. It just is a way to get exposed to it. If you think you're going to have problems with it, it's a smaller environment where you can get more help. And so I encourage a lot of people, if you're a little worried about it or scared of it, maybe a community college, just your senior year, try it and see what you think of it. I think that's always a great experience.
So this question is about how have you ever found gold in your copper mines or any other minerals other than copper?
So we don't have gold in our pit. There probably is a little tiny bit, but we never see it. Same with silver. But we do have moly, molybdenite, and we don't have a sample of here tonight. We also have galena, far in the corner there. But those are minerals that are in the pit as well. We don't process them, but they get on the stockpile. We do see them. They do get processed a little, but never as a final product.
This question is, how deep is the mine?
Our mine, so it's an open pit, so you're not going underground, but it's probably about 1,500 feet from top to bottom.
Yeah. So in the early 1800s in our pit, they were actually mining it underground, and right now we're mining some of those underground workings out. And it's really neat to see all the wood and to see how they mined in the late 1800s, early 1900s. But ours is open pit now.
Yep.
Here's a question: do you travel to different mines in different countries?
I don't currently, but that is a possibility as a mining engineer. With our company, they do a lot of, they'll send you to a mine so you can learn how they do things there. That way we're sharing what we learn, but as a mining engineer, that's definitely a possibility, and that's something I hope to do someday at some point, is to be able to go. I'd particularly like to go to South America and work at some of the mines there.
That's kind of neat thing of our careers, of being a mine engineer or geologist. We do a lot of going to other countries, seeing other cultures and other people, and seeing other lands and other areas of landforms. And so I enjoy that part. And so I hope to get to go to South America or Africa and some of the other places over the years to see some of the other pits.
How did school prepare you to work in a mine?
I think, so as a geologist, when I went into geology at the University of Arizona, there's geologists for water, there's geologists for oceanography, water, there's geologists that go different ways. And so mine's not particularly one of the ones that it's just an option of many type of options. So we can go, if you don't like working in a mine, you can go work other locations as well. I know in my classes I took ones that are aimed towards the mine environment just because that was what I was interested in. And I found the idea of solving the puzzle in the mine and trying to figure out where the ore came from is more exciting to me.
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest thing was learning to work in a group. As geologists and engineering, we're all working together, and we all work on one small piece of the puzzle, and we have to bring it all together. So working with groups in school, doing group projects, and even doing sports and things like that helped me to learn how to be a team player and work together so that we can all achieve what we're working for and all work together. So.
Can students go to the mines for tours?
Yeah, we actually have, our mine has tours. We probably have one every month or so that's scheduled through our administration, and we actually take them out into the pit so they can see the haul trucks and the equipment and the rocks and minerals, and we talk about what are all the different mineral types in our mine, and how all the equipment works.
Yeah.
A question on how do you pull the metals out?
Yeah, so that goes back to, we were talking about the leach pad, and we apply that sulfuric acid solution. And because of the chemistry, the metal really likes the sulfuric acid, so they stick together, and the metal becomes dissolved in a liquid, just like when you drop sugar or salt into water, and the sugar or salt dissolves, it's just like that, and the acid dissolves the metal, and then that travels down kind of like through, like when gravel gets wet, the water goes through it. So the sulfuric acid travels through the leach pad, and at the bottom we have a pond where it all collects, and then we're able to pump it through pipes out of the pond, and then it goes off to the tank house, like Michelle said, and we're able to further process it and get the actual solid metal out of that.
How much time are you in the mine and then in an office?
So for each of us, it's about half and half.
Yeah.
I have to go out every day for the blasts when we're blasting and make sure that everything's being done how it should be, make sure that the guys that are actually out there loading the holes and applying the explosives, that they're safe, and make sure that they have everything that they need.
Yeah, I would say I spend half the day. We work 8-hour shifts, so probably 4 hours a day I'm out in the pit looking at the areas that they just recently blasted or are going to blast, and looking for the ore and the waste and deciding which way it goes. Again, we also look at slopes and constantly looking at safety and making sure everybody is working in the mine is safe.
What subject should a student focus on to become a geologist?
I think the biggest thing of becoming a geologist is enjoying your sciences. I learned a lot from taking sciences, especially as a freshman in college. I took chemistry, atmospheric science, I took astronomy. As a geologist, you learn a lot about the earth, and that was one of the things I really enjoyed, was learning how these landforms in the earth are created, and how the earth will evolve, continue to grow, and how it changes, and like volcanoes and earthquakes and these big glaciers up in the ice caps. And so I think definitely any type of science is really a great idea to explore geology and learn more about it.
Let's see here. So what is your favorite part of your job?
My favorite part is the interaction that we get. There's lots of people that come. We don't run these pieces of equipment. We don't know how. They're the experts in that, and I really enjoy being able to interact with them and work with them. They bring a different perspective to things. A lot of times they think of something that we haven't even considered, and many times that turns out to be a good idea and something that we should be doing. So I really enjoy that interaction.
I agree. I think one of the biggest things about the job as a mine engineer or geologist is you work with lots of other people from different cultures and different nations, and just different areas, operations to metallurgists to all sorts of parts of the business. So even like the accountants, we talk to them, and so I enjoy meeting all the different people and communicating with them. I also just love going out in the field and seeing all the beautiful minerals and rocks. I mean, that's probably one of my big favorite things is learning about all the different types of material that's there, and seeing the prize every time that we start mining a different area.
How deep do you have to dig to find copper?
So it really depends. Copper comes, a lot of times you find copper in areas where there was volcanism or metamorphism, so some type of change by volcanoes that had a magma chamber at one time that was rock that was heated up and then cooled off and water came through. We get a lot of copper minerals in that type of area. And so those materials, that's where we kind of find the copper at. And so,
Yeah, it can change from mine to mine.
yeah. So some areas it could be really shallow, up right on the surface, depending on if the volcanism was close to it. Some areas it could be very deep, several thousands of feet. I think there's some mines nearby us that have copper that's at least 8,000 or 9,000 feet into the ground, and they're actually drilling that deep to get to it.
How long have you been working in the mines?
So I just barely started. I graduated in December, and I started in February. But prior to that, I've had a series of internships. So especially during the summers, I applied for internships and was able to work in the mines, and those internships were just as valuable as going to school. For me, they kind of reconfirmed that this is what I want to be doing. This is something I like and enjoy, and it was a really valuable learning experience, and helped me to apply what I was learning in the classroom and see how it all fits together.
I've been at our particular mine for 7 years, and I enjoyed it a lot. I actually graduated college 14 years ago, but when I came out, it was a time where there wasn't very much mining going on. So I went in and taught high school for 7 years, and then from there moved into the mine. But even at the high school level, I enjoyed because I taught geology, so that was the best part. I got to teach what I love, so I still got to do what I like.
This student asked, have you ever found any type of liquid in the mine?
We have lots of water, lots of groundwater at our mine, and it can actually be a problem sometimes. We have to pump it out, and we drill wells to pump out the water so that it doesn't become a safety issue in our mine.
There used to be at one time some mercury in our pit. It's long gone, but it was actually almost in a liquid state as well. And so there is a little bit of minerals there in that liquid state, but not as often. But yeah, water is the big thing in our pit because it affects all our slopes, and so they're constantly changing how the slopes look in our mine, and we have to work around it.
Do you use math every day in your work?
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes, to one degree or another. You know, all these measurements we do, all this data we collect, we have to process that and filter it, and that's where the math comes in.
And I notice we have a lot of programs that we spend part of our day in the office, and we use those programs to check our math. But still, I think it's important that we know how the math is done. And so if we find a mistake, because the computers aren't accurate, and there are sometimes mistakes in there, and we can find that because we have those skills.
How long does it take to from the time that you to find the minerals?
So it depends. If a geologist, another part of geology in our corporation is that we have a geologist go out and explore, and they actually go and they take a drill rig and they drill into the ground looking for the mineralization, and they can drill just a couple feet and start finding it, or 1,000 feet, and so it depends on how long it takes to get that drill rig out there. But it could take, to get a whole mine started, it could take several years, probably 5 or 7 years at least, to get from process of starting the drilling all the way to getting the first truck there to mine it. The neat part is we're there from the very beginning to the end. So we get to see this whole process bloom and form.
Question about getting lost in the mine. Does anyone get lost in mines?
Yes, so I'm brand new, so you know, mine, there's lots of roads that go to different places. But when we're out, everyone carries a radio, so if you get lost, you can radio someone to come and find you.
And I think the key is in our pit is that we make sure everybody knows where they're going before we let them go. So again, it's a safety issue.
Yep.
So how big is the mine?
Do you know
Miles?
how wide the pit is?
It's a couple miles wide and a mile across. So yeah, it's fairly big. Our pit's small considered like Morenci, where you saw the video from. So it depends on where you're at, but ours is about 1 mile to 2 miles.
Okay. Okay, so we'd like to thank Freeport McMoran and Michelle and Jarek for helping us today in this wonderful presentation about mining engineering and a senior geologist. Make sure you tune in for our next STEM Pro Live.
Welcome to today's edition of STEM Pro Live. I'm Marlis with the Maricopa County Education Service Agency, and I am here with Alex and Helena, 2 flight instructors. We're here at the flight line at the Mesa Phoenix Gateway Airport, which is a partnership between University of North Dakota Aerospace and the Chandler Gilbert Community College. Both of them are flight instructors here and have had awesome experiences and are excited to tell you about how they got interested in flight and what they're doing with those skills today. So first, let's start with Helena. How did you first get interested in flight, and how did that lead you to going to flight school, and kind of what's your journey been?
I've been involved in aviation my entire life. My dad's a pilot for Southwest Airlines, and my grandfather was a pilot, and my uncle as well. So I just got involved traveling all over the world when I was a young kid.
Very cool. And then how did you take your interest in flight? Kind of what schools did you go to? What skills did you learn, and what are you doing with that today?
I went to Red Mountain High School, and there they had a program that was partnered with the East Valley Institute of Technology. So my senior year of high school, I took dual classes. I was taking college courses for aviation while I was going to high school and receiving credit as well, and then that kind of led me into the aviation path, which took me to the University of North Dakota.
Very cool. And what are the steps to become a flight instructor?
Well, first you want to get enrolled in your classes as well as the flight labs. The flight lab and the flight experience is the most important and crucial part, I think, just because of the experience. But first I started with the private pilot ground, then you work your way through instrument and commercial and multi-engine training, and then if you're fortunate enough, you get to get hired on with a flight school and start teaching.
Very cool. And so what does your day look like today as a flight instructor? What do you do each day?
Well, it depends. If it goes as planned, today I have about 4 different students I'm going to meet with and 3 different flights. So I'll be up in the air for about 4 hours maybe, and then I also have a ground sim as well, and then in between that I'll brief with my students and go over material on the ground as well.
Very cool. And what does ground school look like? What does that mean?
Ground school is a class that's focused on, you know, the information you're learning on the ground as far as weight and balance, performance, just the basics aerospace. So there is where you get a really solid foundation, and then with the instructors kind of where you ask questions and move forward.
Very cool. And you kind of started to touch on this. How is STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, how is that a part of your job and learning aviation?
I think overall it's just really solid. It's a nice foundation just for the fundamentals of flight and moving forward. So it's just a good building block, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And what do you really enjoy about flight and your job here?
Everything. It's extremely rewarding. I can't believe I get to do it and get paid, and you know, hopefully become extremely successful and follow in my dad's footsteps. It's just an extreme gift.
Awesome. Very good. Thank you. So Alex, how did you first get interested in flight, and what kind of led you from that interest to pursuing what you're doing now?
Well, when I was 5 years old, I actually always wanted to be a pilot. So basically my head was always up in the sky looking at airplanes, and it all started there. I went on my first flight when I was 12, got to touch the controls, and I said this was it. So that's basically how it started.
That's awesome. And then how did you pursue that interest? How did you, what classes did you take, and how did that bring you to here?
Well, what I did was I got in touch with the University of North Dakota, went through their whole program up in North Dakota, and basically I just took a series of aviation classes along with business classes and got an aviation business degree along with my flight training. So I kind of got a dual purpose degree, and then I did my flight training, and then that's what led me to become a flight instructor here at UND.
Very cool. And so what does your day look like as a flight instructor?
So basically it consists of, you know, we do a difference between flights, simulators, we go on the simulators, and then we have briefings. So my favorite obviously is flights, because actually flying the airplane. I love, you know, teaching. You know, it's a, you know, multifaceted, different way of delivering to students.
And so, since it says STEM Pro Live, we want to hear, how does STEM apply to your work here and all the learning you've done? So science, technology, engineering, math. How do you use that in your work?
Kind of a mix of it all. I mean, starting, you know, we learn all these math formulas and whatnot, you know, how an airplane flies, and then secondhand, you know, we have to know aerodynamics, how an airplane flies, so that goes to the science portion of it, you know, from lift, drag, you know, thrust, weight. That's the basic essentials how an airplane flies. And then, you know, as we move on up in our careers, we learn more advanced stuff. So basically a lot of math with calculations. We really, you know, math is number one, and then I'd say science, understanding.
A lot of physics,
exactly.
Like,
yep,
yeah.
Exactly. A mix of those.
Cool.
Yep.
Very cool. And what do you really enjoy about your work and about flight itself?
I really, you know, coming to work, I really don't feel like I'm working. I come to work and I get to fly. I get to be with students. You know, I have a lot of motivated students. That's what makes my job great. You know, I enjoy coming to see students learn, and then I enjoy being with students, so it's great. And then, you know, obviously at the end of the day I get to fly, and it's awesome. It's great.
Very, very cool. Well, thanks Alex so much for sharing with us. Now Alex is going to take us on a tour around some of the facilities here and some of the things that they do to help train pilots and future flight instructors. All right, so Alex, tell us where we are right now.
So we're in our Cessna 172 flight simulator, single engine flight simulator, and this is one of our primary tools that we use to train students for their first time before they actually hop in an airplane. We do a lot of emergency training in here and various other maneuvers and whatnot to get a student ready for training. So
very cool. And what are kind of the three different components of the flight training: ground school, the simulator, and the actual flight. Can you talk about why each of those components is important and what you do in each one?
Yeah, so those components are important because the ground portion is where you actually get the knowledge portion of everything, and then the simulator is where we can kind of test it out. We can pause the simulator, which is great. Like this whole cockpit here is actually the same exact cockpit as we have in an airplane. So I mean, everything else, it just doesn't move. So it's pretty realistic. And then when we actually get in the airplane part, that's where you're actually doing the flying. But the simulator is good for, like I said, emergency training. Like I said, you can pause it. You can, the instructor sits behind here and he can put different scenarios for the student, and then the student can learn in that way and then apply it in the airplane. So that's where it starts. Yep.
Very cool. And how important were simulations to you individually as far as your interest in flight?
So when I was younger, I got my own simulator, set it all up. For Christmas, my parents would give me additions, and I started when I was younger. I just wanted to fly, and that was the closest thing I could get to actually flying an airplane legally.
Cool.
So anyways, yeah. So I started when I was about 8 years old, and just did that until high school, and then I started actually flight training when I was in high school, and then I went on from there. So, and then that's where I am today.
Very cool.
Yep.
Wow. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for explaining all that, Alex. Now we're going to transition over to our live portion where we will be taking all of your questions and having Alex and Helena and maybe a few other people answering all the questions that are coming in. Hey everybody, thank you so much again for joining us for today's STEM Pro Live. We're just about ready to get into our live question and answer portion of STEM Pro Live. But before we do that, and we've already got some great questions in, so keep those coming. But before we jump into that, wanted to hear from Rex Ginder of University of North Dakota Aerospace, a little bit more about the University of North Dakota Chandler Gilbert Community College partnership and how that all works.
Thanks, Marlis. The partnership has actually existed between University of North Dakota's Aerospace Department and Chandler Gilbert Community College for just over 20 years. So this program is designed as an associate's degree program where students can enter from either senior year in high school or from freshman in college, and during those 5 semesters get certified for their pilot's license, their instrument rating, their commercial pilot's license, twin engine, and the certified flight instructor certificate, all in the course of 5 semesters.
Wow. All right. And then what do they do? Do they go on from that point, or?
That's a great
what comes
question.
after
After their 5 semesters in an associate's degree are completed, they have the opportunity to transfer to a 4-year university, such as University of North Dakota, without losing any of the credit that they gain through the associate's degree program.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks so much for that. We're now going to switch over to our question and answer portion. How many times do you fly a week, or maybe it's easier to talk about fly per day? And then how many students do you teach per class?
You can answer first.
Right now I have about 6 students, so I have 2 permanent launches a day, which is about 2 hours a day per student, and then I kind of just fill in that time with other slots. So right now I'm in the air about 4 to 6 hours a day.
Yeah, and I'm about the same too. I'm about in the air 5 to 6 hours a day, just depends, give or take. And then as you saw in the simulator, I'm in the simulator as well and meeting with students.
programs, and we're seeing some things we wanted to share with you, and we're asking you your thoughts on that. And most importantly, this evening, we hope you find it both informative and a benefit. And again, the rule tonight, if you can, please ask questions. We want to make sure we're going down the right path and we tell the story accurately, and it reflects where you want to take Peoria. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to John Sefton. John is our director. You know Mr. Sefton. He directs our Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities Department. And then to his left, your right, is Chris Calcaterra, our Deputy Director for Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities. So with that, I'll turn it over to John, and they'll both take the lead, but we'll all kind of collectively chime in at the right time as we go through it. John?
Great. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. It truly is an opportunity to talk about parks and recreation. More than just a funny TV show, it is really a profession. It is a profession and a network of dedicated and impassioned professionals who take their intent to protect our open space, to protect our natural resources, and to care for our public spaces. It's a group of people who design and deliver unique and very much one-of-a-kind opportunities for our neighbors to engage in healthy lifestyles and to connect with the opportunities that make them feel better. It is really about benefiting oneself, one's soul, and even beyond to the community. Most importantly, Parks and Rec maintains a focus and an interest on serving all of the neighborhoods, all of the people, everyone, with the direct access to neighborhood parks, with programs that are available to everyone, with our intent to mitigate barriers to that participation, to that happiness and that wellness. You know, if you think back to your childhood, I mean, there's probably some fond memories at your neighborhood park. Remember how they used to build slides really tall and out of straight metal, especially those of us in Arizona, nice and hot? You know, playing in your neighborhood park, learning how to play baseball, learning how to swim, those are things that really matter. I'll never forget my daughter's very first experience at Tiny Tot Gymnastics. That's a story of my life. It's part of what we've become, and I know each of you have those experiences as well. For sure, these are things that are important. Our memories of the past, our opportunities of the future, they're here today, they're many, but the benefits derived from parks and recreation and our community facilities are certainly many. So tonight, we're going to take that, as Eric mentioned, sort of a dive into our functions. We're going to focus on business services, parks and park rangers, open space and trails, rights of way, Peoria Sports Complex, the Peoria Library. We're going to take a pivot at that point, dive into our fee-based programs, which is specifically related to your fee policy. Chris and I are going to hand back and forth as we go through this. It's going to be a lot of information, but as Eric mentioned, we're going to have a chance to stop and get your feedback, your direction, and your interests. So as we look at the department, this is really an important role here when you look at the core services. The little box is business services. Maria Calcaterra is way in the back of the room, but she's been a support, and I've got a special slide for her and her team. But let's focus on the service delivery divisions. Library and Learning Services, head up by Nathaniel Washburn. New to his area this round of organizational structure is our special interest classes, as well as the learning and the collection development in our libraries. We had a chance to explore libraries just last fall. Neighborhood and community parks, head up by Jake Eason. His team, some of the new programs that he has in his area are adult sports, some of the facility rentals, the trails, and open space, and the park rangers with our reorg. Community facilities and recreation. Blake Englert has probably taken on the lion's share and the breadth of responsibility. You guys all know Blake from the sports complex. He's been here almost every year and providing those updates. His expanse into recreation area and the responsibilities of such are phenomenal, and I appreciate everything that he's done. He's taken on not just the sports complex, but the rec center, the youth and aquatics programs as well. Let's dive into that mission real quick. You know, obviously we want to be absolutely critical and focused on quality and costs and creativity, but I like to highlight those last four words. Responsive to citizen input. Our team is really great at doing that, as you are, and you've seen how we effectively manage the resources and manage the issues of our community. Parks and Recreation, we as council and leadership can be very proud and boast about our Parks and Recreation system. We're led by the council-approved Community Services Master Plan. About 5 years ago, we went through the CAPRA accreditation, 150 plus standards that are the best practices of the industry. Through our most recent process of going through our programs, we've realized that over 95,000 annual registrations have happened in Peoria. That doesn't even begin to count all the other passive users, the folks that just come out and utilize the parks or go on trails. We would love to try to get to some of that data, and we'll be working on that with our partners. Now, specific, the next bullet point there, partnerships, our advisory boards, and I'd like to call out two of our members, Anthony and Jerry are here. Anybody else join us? The boards and commissions are absolutely critical to helping us do our very best. We partner with our businesses, we partner with nonprofits, and we partner absolutely with all of our other city departments, from public safety to planning. That final bullet point, 28% of a cost recovery pertinent to tonight's discussion, is strong. And that when you look across the country, that cost recovery is part of the policy initiatives that council set for organizations. But that 28% helps us to do a lot more in a lot of ways throughout the community. Again, our vision, focusing on the livability of Peoria through a very important word, connection to community, to our places and our programs. And with that, Chris will jump into, actually, no, got ahead of myself. We're going to jump right into, as I mentioned earlier, a slide specifically for business services, and Maria Calcaterra and her team comprise this division. They've been vital at providing a level of support and service to the frontline divisions of Parks and Recreation and the newly created Neighborhoods and Human Services Department. They played a key role in leading the transition and creating that department, and I know Chris Hallett and his team are appreciative, very appreciative of the business services folks. This team was simply amazing. At times they were coaches, at times they were cheerleaders, and at many times they were referees through this whole process. They led the compilation of this comprehensive program review that will drive much of tonight's discussion. And with that, Chris will jump in.
Mayor and council members, John has provided a brief look at our department. I wanted to jump in and talk about a little bit more about our operating areas. And we're going to start with the foundation of what a great city is built on, and that's its parks. City Council has a long tradition of investing in park spaces and amenities throughout its history. Let's begin with our oasis in the desert, essentially, our neighborhood and community parks. We have 34 of those and 2 community parks. These parks are programmed with about 305 acres dedicated to neighborhood parks in the neighborhoods, local to the residents that John mentioned, stepping out of your doors. And our community parks, our regional parks, are 137 acres with manicured fields, amenities galore, group settings for environments, for activities, and opportunities for those citizens and residents alike. A recent survey of our community parks actually tallied up 26 out of state and 3 countries represented at our seasonal tournaments in the fall. And that is from results from multiple sports, not just our most common baseball tournaments, if you will, because affiliation with the sports complex. But so we are an economic business driver for the city at certain times of year, and summer, quite frankly, has become more active over the last few years because we've dedicated programming aspects to that opportunity to bring in those tournaments. One of the funniest, if you will, and opportunities is we actually engage in not our 4-legged residents. Our dog parks are phenomenal at the community parks and our neighborhood parks for the activities for the residents come out. I just wish I could survey the actual dogs because that would actually provide some feedback for those areas. Some of the listed amenities and programs truly embrace and enhance what the quality and character of the city possesses have become destinations for not only weekend use but also for the general picnic in the park. And council has made it a priority to keep these facilities and our citizens open space areas and programming consistently in our park systems for everyone. From graffiti to turf maintenance, we kind of are a victim of our own success. The success of heavy use comes in an approach of booking and programming the fields through our approved field allocation policy. This policy allows for scheduling of the facilities on an annual basis, which allows the city use and city partner use to come before any outside promoter request. Once this allocation process is administered and completed, we then understand the heavy use ahead of us for the year. When that happens, we go straight to our best practices and our current standards on maintenance, and we manage through those issues of scheduling and opportunities for all to use the fields. So in order to maintain that level of service to our end users, we engage in several different strategies. We have a few in front of you. For example, our standard operating procedures for some might be more routine, mundane. For us, because of our high use, we're hitting those facilities on a more routine basis and taking care of the wear and tear on those areas. So you see a lot of passive use areas in our parks. You also see a lot of focused, concentrated sports areas in our parks. So we tend to focus on the high use areas, not so much the passive in the right times of the year so we can maintain our turf stand. With the help of council, we've continued our operations and heavy landscape refresh programs for our park system. We also have a sustainable practice in our turf reduction in areas that we are not conducive to turf grass stands maintaining in the desert. We also review on an ongoing basis our efficiencies in our actual operating budgets. And we have come to a best practice standard and potentially change that we want to address in the concept of contract mowing our neighborhood parks. This would obviously free up staff to work in the more of a landscape role and not so much in a mowing, powdering role and on a seasonal basis. And last and not least, the premier venue for our tournaments are our community parks. So we do offer those for our residents and also for our out-of-town guests. These facilities, at the will of the council, have been constructed and at the help of the engineering department to be built where they can withstand the use and the wear and tear that we put on them and the general conditions in the Arizona climate. A major part of the asset program maintenance is our FY20 requests and initiatives. Although all these are important facets to maintain healthy parks, a couple of highlights of our programs and continuation of some of our programs are what you see in front of you. To focus on improving the maintenance standard of our current portfolio, I mentioned a few earlier about the contract mowing opportunities. We also would like to continue the refreshment of our park system. You see a couple of our parks that we would name as we move through our inventory to make those landscape improvements. We also want to focus on the construction and renovation of a new inclusive playground facility at the Rio Vista Park, adjacent to the group picnic Romanos. That is a heavily used facility, and it's due for replacement and an inclusivity features for ADA accessibility and all play for all ages. I do want to focus on something, turf reduction, as obviously a drought management policy is coming into effect from the state. We, not unplanned, we're ahead of the curve, we believe. We had a turf irrigation and reduction study that occurred about 1.5 years ago. And literally at 2 o'clock today, we were just notified that the Peoria Irrigation System and Turf Study has been awarded the National Merit Award by the American Society of Irrigation Consultants, Excellence in Irrigation Award. So that's a mouthful, and congratulations to our staff that really had the foresight and the budget office that helped us work through that process. So.
Well, it's a big deal in Arizona. Councilmember Hunt?
Chris, I understand the words, but what does it mean when you reduce turf? What do you replace it with in a park?
Absolutely, great question. Vice Councilmember Hunt. Apologize. When you reduce turf and park, you're looking for areas that have been designed previously under a different ultimatum, if you will, of water management and restrictions. So it could go to a mulched area of landscape. It could go to a desert composed granite landscape. It could go to an actual, they have xeriscape plants that we could put in those areas. So we're not going to remove plant material out of it. We're removing turf. And envision the areas like in the old campus here where you had turf in between the library and the little squares of patches. So those kind of things where it really doesn't make sense for nuisance turf that's what we call it for turf managers. It's nuisance turf. We'd rather take care of a large space of turf.
Yeah, I get it out here, wherever it is over there. But it just seems like decomposed granite's not really a comfort surface for kids to play, or might we even consider a community garden or something that can be more interactive in those areas? It would still require water.
I do apologize. These would be areas like hills and slopes, landscape zones where trees have outgrown. The turf cannot actually recoup underneath the shade canopy of the trees. We would not be taking away active, passive areas of turf for play.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor and members of council, we are recommending that we continue the programs and recommendations that you see in front of you, maximize our existing maintenance budgets, continue the overall commitment that yourselves and the city has in parks renovation program in key areas, and be responsive to the field allocation process. That is a living document that changes from year to year as our organizations come in to utilize facilities, and continue a robust CIP program for the parks area as well. And as I mentioned previously, pursue new opportunities in procurement in the ways of potentially looking at contracts for areas to help us focus on landscape areas in the parks.
That's a lot of information. Any questions there?
I've got a question. First of all, I just want to make a comment about our accessible play areas, all-inclusive for kids. Our city is way too big for us not to have entered into this realm yet. So I'm really, really glad to see that we're doing it, and I hope that after Rio Vista, we'll look at other parks too, so we can get those strategically placed around our city.
And I would want to point out, Mayor, too, that the picture you see before you is Hayes Park that was most recently done, fully wheelchair accessible. And with each of the programs that we've done with replacing playground equipment, that the accessibility for all has been part of the design intent. So whether it's just not as large as what we have planned for Rio Vista, and it might not be an accessible destination, they are great tools, great assets, and very specifically designed within the neighborhood parks. So West Green, Hayes, and a couple of the others all have those accessible elements and are wheelchair accessible by nature of the engineered wood fiber, so things along those lines. So we have already begun over the past several years implementing the accessibility standards, but what we're really excited about is doing the fully designed Rio Vista Rec Center, the destination all-inclusive play area.
And Mayor, we will be I'm pausing. We will look at this at Paloma Park as well. So the inclusivity will move into the north as well as with the playground for Paloma.
We have great resources. There's a number of philanthropy groups that are engaged in this interest as well. There's just a plethora of science behind play, and I'm very proud to be part of an industry that has taken so much interest in making sure that everyone has and receives the benefits of recreation.
Yes, and I'm really proud to be part of a city that does so. It's wonderful. So thanks for raising the bar. I appreciate that. So I just have a question about dog parks. What is our plans for the future of dog parks?
So from a planning standpoint,
Without
future...
having to interview the dogs.
Yeah, that would be great. We'll be working on that telepathic knowledge from dogs. That'll be a small budget request. The next iteration of our Paloma Park design does include a 3-cell dog park, and I think that this is one of those trends nationally that we recognize that to do it effectively and to maintain them effectively, we need a minimum size of acreage, and we need to be able to designate those use areas because we have to have that rest area in between for the turf. Some of the other trends are involving different materials and things along that line. Being in Arizona, I think we're going to be kind of stuck with some of our turf / decomposed granite areas. But we have 5 different areas currently spread out from across the community from Pioneer Park, and again, the new ones designed with the acreage. We've looked at a couple of other parks, and again, this is a driver issue, is having enough space. The entire park could end up being a dog park, but we really can't go in that direction. The other is the proximity to neighbors. We really have to pay attention to that, and I think that's been some concern from some neighbors. We've met a few that if they're just too close, then it just is one of those inconveniences. So we want to take that into consideration. But as we do them at our community parks, our true destination parks, we've got a good plan, and the maintenance team has been developing their SOPs to ensure that we have a good experience for the dogs and the users.
So I understand going forward and when we've got a larger park that it is going to be, a great place to take your dog. But some of the ones that we retrofitted at the beginning, I think we had 3 of them that we really, put up fences and tried to accommodate a dog park in an area that wasn't originally planned for that. I wonder if we have any plans to go in and try to restore those to something that might be more conducive to the neighborhoods and to dog owners and dogs.
We can certainly look at that. I mean, as far as the specifics in those areas, from a renovation standpoint, we're always looking. It would also mean closing at times in order to do some renovations. So the conditional assessment of each of the dog park areas is something that is looked at ongoing. The project list, as you know and have seen, have been pretty long for our department. And the ones that we have are certainly well used, and I might even say abused in some cases by nature of the sheer volume of use. But we could definitely look into something more specific in that area. If you have specifics or specific areas or issues that have come to attention, any of you, we certainly want to hear those.
I know that you are more familiar with any of those issues than all of us combined, but I think doing an assessment of them would be of value, and then we can decide where to go from there.
Excellent. And to your point, dog parks continue to be one of the top trends in parks and recreation. People love them. It's as much about the people as it is the dogs, from everything from the amenity packages that are in those areas. So I think that we've done a good job. I think from an analysis standpoint, I'm trying to draw off of what we did with our master plan, that from a service point that we're not lacking in resource for the dog parks, but at those points, as you mentioned, what can we do to ensure that they stay top? We'll have the team work on that.
Thank you.
Okay, so with our reorganization of the division and creation of the new department, park rangers are back to the Parks and Recreation. They were previously in the police department. We certainly welcome them back, and it is our objective to support them with their primary purpose in connecting with and interacting with our park and trail users. We know that they are some of our best advocates. They know the park system extremely well, and we're working with them to gain their knowledge and also help to support them in that way. As we work through the next iteration of the year, our focus is going to be on the safety, first and foremost, of our parks and trail assets. We continue to develop our user data. Who's using what parks where, what are the issues in those areas, what are the interacts that they have with the patrons, and starting to track that so that we can start to begin and build some trending. Of course, we want to be able to respond quickly to some of those issues. New this year, since coming to the department, we have a new phone number for the park ranger, 623-773-7700. And that voicemail, that if you leave a voicemail at that number, it will actually get sent via text or email to the park ranger on duty. So one of those efforts that we're putting forward to ensure that we've got good contact with the park rangers. With that, any questions?
Yes, Councilmember Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. So you said you have a new phone number. Is that number going to be posted at all the parks on our signage?
Absolutely. Councilmember Edwards, Mayor, the signage concern, we've got a number of concerns throughout our system from trails. We're going to talk about that a little bit. Some of our maintenance standards as well. On some of we have some signs that are failing and failing fast. It's kind of weird, and the way that they've either be sunbeat or what, but the information we've had this past year, this past 9 months, we've had significant change. The department name has changed. Our city code numbers have changed. The importance of getting all of that detail right so that when we do get them up and in the area, the phone number has changed. That's what staff has been working on over the past 6 months to ensure that we've got that connection. Talking with Zach, he said, I want to see what's on the website, connects to what's on our reservation system, connects to the contract, and connects to what they see out in the park. That was, music to my ears hearing him say that they were thinking that through. So yes, that phone number is up, running, it's under practice, it will be certainly readily available. It will be on all of the contracts so that when a renter, and that's one of the conflict points, somebody's using a Ramada, the renter comes up and says, hey, wait, this is my birthday party. And that's where the rangers kind of get into working with customers in that way. So the clear, concise, and then making sure that our code is appropriately signed. That sign content is extremely important for enforcement, both from our park rangers as well as our law enforcement. So it is a project that's underway. We couldn't be done soon enough, but it takes time.
Oh, yes. Councilmember Leone.
Yeah, John, I just want to know, how many park rangers do we have?
We currently have 5 park rangers and a park ranger supervisor.
Are we going to be hiring any more park rangers?
We will. With the new community park, Paloma Community Park coming on, that builds capacity within the system for two additional park rangers.
And how many parks do we have?
We're at 34 neighborhood parks, and with Paloma coming on would be 3 community parks.
For those 5 park rangers and the 2 supervisors, can they handle all those parks?
In my estimation, that's something that we monitor continuously. That's really key to how we are focusing on the data acquisition, our user interacts, what they're doing, where they're doing it, and that can help us define, are they handling the issues? So part of that data capture is how are we best serving those citizens and what are the issues that they're dealing with, whether that be like my conflict that I mentioned earlier, whether that be being out and being proactive on looking at the safety, being out working with our landscape folks on SEPTED issues so that we make sure that we've got safe, visible parks. Those are things that we monitor on a regular basis, and as that staff ramps up to 7, we will certainly be monitoring that and what their duties and responsibilities are.
Because I noticed when I go up there and people tell me they don't see enough park rangers and kids are running around throwing stones around, dogs are running around the park and doing their thing. So I didn't know how many park rangers we have, how much territory they can cover, you know, and I'm a little concerned about that.
Absolutely, and thank you, Council Member. That is certainly from a safety standpoint or where we recognize that the public is misbehaving. We continue to work closely with law enforcement, our PD, the non-emergency number, or the emergency number in the case of really bad behavior. We want to engage the neighborhoods in that response so that we can address those quickly. We do not, and I would not ever, I think, estimate that we're going to have around-the-clock 24, every park is going to have always a supervisor or a ranger on site. We do have, first half of the day at a number of the parks, our park maintenance staff are trained and supported in recognizing negative behavior trends. So if there's things that are happening, they get the support, they can contact a supervisor, or they can address some of those issues as well. Sometimes just the presence of the park maintenance crew, people don't necessarily know the difference. They're a uniform, they're support, they're taking care of, they're working for the city, and it's a real positive. So while we have 7, or will have 7 park rangers, we have another 30 plus that are parks maintenance staff. We have a number of park programmers. All of the programs that we offer that are in the parks, that's typically led by staff as well. The bright neon t-shirts on a Saturday that our site supervisors, they're out there with our sports teams and the programs that we're running. So staff are out there. It's more than just the rangers. And I think that as we work on the information on the signs, as we work with our neighborhoods, have better connection with our HOAs, that we can respond to the issues and then be proactive through a good education.
What does it cost to clothe a park ranger? I mean, uniforms and everything.
I would not have that off the top of my head from a resource.
As John mentioned, it's where this is a new ambassadorship for the park rangers. So the clothing potentially from the PD department may be different than it is as a new ambassador program in the parks department. Right now, we're estimating about $3,500 for clothing and gear for park rangers.
Yeah, I'd like to see us put a couple more on. Park rangers.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I know this is a hot topic for our mayor and council. Our trails and our open space, certainly one of the top from our community. Our assets, our PORS network is of shared use pathways, and our growing open space preserves is something that we can be very, very proud of. And I want to call out our planning team, Chris Hawkes and his crew, for setting forward and working with mayor and council on things like the Sonoran Preservation Program and the Desert Lands Conservation Ordinance. Our Parks and Recreation Department gets to sort of implement a lot of the visioning and the policy that's associated with those two documents. I do want to point out that one of our very special projects this year, our Trails Wayfinding and Sign program, was 100% funded by MAG, and that is something that is our tool. What you see here is the depiction of the trailhead signage. And per your budget last year, we have the capacity to begin doing these at trailheads. And this is where that information, again, the team is really focusing on map detail, rules and regulations, and then the right locations for these areas. We also, with respects to our trails, just today, Chris had good news, I've got good news, that we received another grant from MAG, a design assistance grant that will get us to a 15% concept for the trailway from Happy Valley to Jomax. That's an additional mile north of Happy Valley along the New River, and then the power line corridor from New River to the Agua Fria. So it's really, really good news. We've had great partnerships with MAG, and I think that they're recognizing that as we deploy and we start to implement these programs, our public cares about our trails and our pathways, our shared use resources that we have out there, and we continue to do really good work. So This is from a trails and an open space standpoint, something that we want to continue, take the leadership and the guidance from those documents, continue to implement. We are under construction right now from Williams to Pinnacle, in design from Pinnacle to Happy Valley. It's all really, really important news for the folks across the city. I've been at the end of that trail a number of times and ran into folks who just stop and we look off into the into the desert and think, wow, one day, but that day is getting closer. So
It's good news. Thank you.
it's very good news.
And it's
Any
great
questions?
news that someone else is paying for it too. Yes, Councilmember Binsbacher, Vice Mayor Binsbacher, excuse me.
Thank you, Mayor. So from the point that you start the project with the signs to completion, how long does that take to get it all done, all replaced? And is it 2 years, 5 years?
I wish I had a really good answer for you. This is the inventory, the production cycle. We are at the very front end in working with the team. So the information is the critical part, and that's with all of the changes that we've had literally in the past 7 months, where we want to get that right, not waste any of those precious tax dollars, get the signs. We've got our partner on board. Actually, it's 2 different sign companies from a design and a construction standpoint. It's in place for the entire system, and I think that's where we'll always be working on the right information. All the mile markers are going to be correct, all of the details. This really does distinguish a river trail versus the mountain trail, the shared use paths, if you will. So there's a lot of really good information that's going into this plan. It was really a good process, and I have to give accolades to our team who provided a lot of the support and the guidance. And from
we're 8 weeks away from starting the project. We're hoping
Okay.
within a year and a half we could get this. To John's point, we're not sure how
great.
far in the trail system we can get.
But it's in my lifetime,
It's yes.
God willing, as far as I know. So one other quick question about technology on these signs, and I'm sure you look at all kinds of different options, but I've thought about, when you're out there and you see this, if they're, the QR code technology where you kind of just scan it, and then on your device now you have the trail map and phone numbers and all of that is there.
One of the highest technology pieces, believe it or not, is staff has been working with first responders because it's identifying where you're at on the trail. So that was a big piece. It was just wrapped up with Jake and staff. So that made the process become more complicated, but obviously it's the right thing to do. And now that we're moving forward out of that. So there's a system in place that you'll be able to identify where you're at on the trail to first responders through a phone when you call.
Great. Thank you. It's exciting.
Yes, Councilmember Hunt.
I don't know if it was back a slide or what, but I saw urban forests. There we go. John, actually just define that for me. It says we have 10,500 trees. Is that spread out through the entire city or whomever?
This is just the city's tree asset on city property. So this doesn't include private property, commercial
Okay,
properties.
what is an urban forest? Would you define that? Because I have my definition, but I'm not sure it's what you're talking about.
Urban forest is the grand term, if you will, for having a tree program in the city. So we have an urban forest program, which is part of a Tree City USA program that we participate in. And so we describe it as the Peoria's urban forest. It's the conglomerate of the single tree, but it's across the city as city properties.
There's a small actual urban forest at 77th Avenue and Mountain View across from Santa Fe Elementary. I was there when we planted those trees and everything. Now, see, that's my concept of an urban forest is actually a space where there are a whole bunch of trees and maybe some benches and stuff. Is that not something that we do today, or is that old school, or what?
Actually, Paloma Park has part of it's called a bosque, or a grove, if you will, of trees. So we were looking at that. That is part of the design plan schematics.
Okay.
But absolutely to your point.
There will be some more just groups of trees that are putting off wonderful stuff into the air and.
Correct.
Absolutely, to your point, Councilmember Hunt, the investment in trees is why this bullet point is here, that we continue, it's sizable today. We have a lot of work, our entire New River, the Agua Fria, these are grand opportunities for us to do tree plantings. We've worked with philanthropy groups to do tree plantings at our the planet, save the planet days and things along that line. So there's a lot of different ways. The retention basins and other are ways that we can also focus on that tree inventory, therefore our urban forest. And to call it that in the desert is really, I mean, I think it's kind of one of those things. It is a definition. How do we define that forest? But thank you.
Okay, so that's a really good idea, the retention basins. Thank you.
Okay.
We're going to move on to right-of-ways rather quickly, hopefully. But Mayor and Council, the group you just heard takes care of trails and open space, also takes care of right-of-way contracts and retention buildings or basins, city buildings, and they work in conjunction with our engineering department. In a large way, there's infrastructure design guidelines that when a developer comes into the city, we want to be part of that, and now we are as part of a landscape design guidelines, which helps us when they construct. So when we do take over maintenance, we actually have sustainable practices for our natural environment. So that was a huge project. Again, staff and engineering in both departments collaborating heavily together on that. We also, you may recall too, last March we met as a study session and talked about our level of service for the right-of-way areas. And we have come up with 6 level of service standards. And I'm happy to report that we have our RFP recipients. We are going through those right now. In the next few months, we should have awarded contract underneath those new level of service standard agreements. And as this group also has the current action strategies that you can see in front of you. One of the biggest ones, part of the Eyes of Peoria program, we want to introduce this to our contractors. This will be another eyes and ears down the streets, covering the city in the same way as our staff would be. I just mentioned about the level of service standards as well. Another big one that we talked about in the spring was our weed abatement pilot program. This program came at the request and support of council to look at the seasonality of weeds in our right-of-way areas and our streets. And I'm proud to report we've done this 3 times over the last year, and we've eradicated weeds in some heavy use areas, in street cracks and right-of-way areas. We're only as good as the rain we get, and unfortunately the rain we get also is as good as the weeds get. So it is a game it's a science game that we play with our pre-emergent and our emergent. So with that, we also have created design standards. Councilmember Hunt, you mentioned looking at trees and retention basins. The design standards for our refresh program introduces that into our program. We have 107th and Adams as one of our projects this year, and we have 2 other locations as part of our refresh for basins. And these projects will be CIP and also standardized as we go through our design program.
Okay. Thank you.
And Mayor and Council, we are recommending through the upcoming budget process that you will see a commitment of ongoing need for operational needs for newly acquired CIP and right-of-way projects. These projects have been in the CIP project system for several years and have now come to fruition and are ready to be taken care of. Also, the continuation of the retention refresh program to move through our inventory that we started last year, and also implement the new level of standards in our right-of-way contract. With this, we also request we review the final results of our pilot program for our weed program. And with that, I'll open this up for any questions.
Councilmember Hunt?
I'm going to follow up on something. So the city does use pre-emergent?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. I don't know why I thought that there was a restriction against it because it was some kind of chemical and we didn't want it to leak into the ground. And I don't have weeds in my yard. That's not a brag. It's just a fact because we use pre-emergent. And it always seems so silly to me that we have this plethora of weeds every year when you don't have to because the pre-emergent keeps all but a couple of brave little weeds from coming up. So we shouldn't expect to see weeds on city rights-of-way? Is that what you're saying?
Councilman Hunt, I would never promise that. Weeds, what the pre-emergent does is it covers a barrier, so it prevents the weed seed from germinating through it.
Right.
What happens if it's scarified or if it's moved, if the tree is planted, it reduces that barrier, and therefore we do have weeds. So you'll see weeds pop up in cracks and all the corners, which is why we have an ongoing maintenance program to manage that.
Thank you.
We're moving on to the sports complex. Welcome to our 26th season kickoff of spring training. Mayor and Council, thank you for your continued support in this endeavor and unique Arizona and Peoria mega tourism event. Spring training was ranked number 2, best place to experience a spring training Cactus League game in 2018 from USA Today. Dubbed the voice of the fan survey, it rated by keywords online of reviews of 36,000 fans from family, friendliness, food, and overall fan experience. So congratulations for number 2 rating. A 40-year adventure, so 54% of the way for those mathematicians, with 2 Major League Baseball teams is a testament to this council's commitment to providing residents with a year-round venue for community experiences and building social and entertainment connections. We just recently returned from Seattle as well with the Media Missions PIO office with Jen Stein and Economic Development Rick Buss, with some very productive meetings in collaboration with the teams to talk about what partnerships we can form moving forward in both those areas. So I'm very encouraged by that. The stadium also, as you know, hosts year-round events, and the compilation of economic output by gross domestic product, and I like using that because that is direct numbers, is $45 million. So that's a huge economic impact for the city of Peoria. And the complex is very familiar with hosting special events and events of all different varieties. To the credit of this council, we have used this true city asset over 300 days a year. And the diversity of the groups that use it, and as you can see in this picture, if you can see it, the craziness of baseball weddings, they do happen. I would want to share a couple of few action strategies we have in plan. We are looking to develop and implement a more robust destination event at the stadium, and we're also looking to continuation of exploration of the stadium point concepts for a growth product in the vicinity of the stadium. Mayor and Council, in comparison with our Cactus League facilities, the city maintains a very high bar for usage and activation events at the stadium year-round. We want to increase our presence with partners like the Arizona Office of Tourism and our regional business partners, as well as our local chamber. We also want to create premier event offerings, and we want to keep those offerings in conjunction with our economic vitality that we provide during season and non-season at the stadium. And we're only a couple of weeks away from spring training, so we look forward to seeing everybody out start of 2022. With that, I'll open up for any questions.
No questions.
Thank you.
And we did put a library slide here, and I'm going to be very brief on this one because we've talked about libraries last fall, and we're getting tight on time. Okay. So we'll take a quick pivot here. So this, as part of our agenda, we're going to dive right into the fee-based programming, youth and adult sports, special interest classes, and the others. So part of our overall goals is to meet this cost recovery goal that was a council policy passed back in 2012. Obviously, it's, or always, is it a goal to work within the existing budgets. When I say analyze annually, that means constantly throughout the year. We're looking at hard costs, we're looking at registration timelines, and we're working with and trying to implement different ways that our citizens engage in those 95,000 different interactions that we have throughout the year. I do want to always highlight that the market conditions have a key role in the economic vitality of these types of activities. So something that's very important. And from a policy standpoint, we adjust from a policy standpoint as often as we need, and of course we appreciate that from your standpoint. At the core of the pricing and fee policy is the pyramid. The pyramid is really an evaluation of the benefit continuum. Who derives the benefit? Does the community derive the benefit, or does the individual derive the benefit? You can see at the base of the pyramid, you would have a zero cost recovery goal and a full subsidy for those types of programs, i.e. park maintenance. At the top of that pyramid, you might have something like Ramada Rentals, where you would expect that the individual would pay the full cost of the freight or expenses associated with reserving the exclusive use of that part of the facility. So it's very complex. I think it was quoted in the newspaper as saying that the grid with over 220 different pricing areas, that it's very complex. So we do realize that it's best practice. It is something that from an accreditation standpoint, that we want to have this policy intact, that we do derive from it some flexibility to work the day-to-day. We do focus on our program fees, both from a maximum standpoint. Every year, you as council set a policy with respects to our pricing that gets published. That is a maximum price. So there, every year with our budget process, you adjust those fees. In fact, just last council meeting, you had a couple of fixes that we had in your consent agenda item. So with that, it also gives us flexibility in changing our program offerings. the same thing won't happen all the time. So that's really an important aspect, that some programs will stop, others will start, and that by nature of this pricing policy, we have the flexibility in doing so.
Before you move past pricing, I would just like to make a comment, and that is that I realize that it's complex, but it really centers upon the taxpayers. You know, they are already paying taxes. And so taking that into consideration when we're looking at the assets that they receive from the city of Peoria, I think this is a really strong, healthy way to do it. When you're talking about just an individual, you know, renting a Ramada or, you know, having their birthday party there or whatever they do, versus what's best for the community as a whole, I think it's just a really good, healthy, strong way to do our pricing. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well said, Mayor. Thank you.
As we spoke earlier about the level of service and field allocations, Council's investment in high-quality fields has led us to a point of youth and adult sports programs to benefit from this as well on those facilities. The incredible demand, however, also varies from groups and outside leagues. It makes it a challenge to allocate those fields and for all the time that they want. Strong partnerships with Little League and the tournament promoters is really the basis of what Peoria is known for. We actually have a field allocation policy I mentioned earlier. On an annual basis, we have one point of contact that actually manages through that process. And through that process, we manage to compromise and make sure that everyone's request can get fulfilled on the fields of choice. So these fields are being used on a year-round basis. And to kind of entail that, our weekends, we have 52 weekends. Our community parks are rentals for 105 youth tournaments. So that kind of gives you an idea of our turnover and how we move in and out of tournaments. That said, we do like to provide, and Mayor, what you just said, the recreation opportunities to our community, and in many ways, in many forms. It's just not enough to engage with open space areas, but we also want to activate with play. And by play, organized play, so they can learn from a young age to an adult age how to be more values and build teamwork in the community. We're going to show you here, utilizing the price model and fee policy pyramid that John shared earlier, you can see that youth sports is highlighted as a highly individual, community as a goal target. Inside the pyramid is 60%, our 5-year average is 53%, and our FY18 actual average is 41%. We have not hit the mark on revenues and are refocusing our efforts, all while fighting the increased cost of doing business. Remember, as much as business we want to be, it is important to remember that we also promote a quality of life and livability factor to our residents. That said, our team is working diligently and strong to work on some action strategies to bring us back into our cost recovery goal. Some of those ideas and concepts are to look at implementing a shorter season in the summertime. Potentially, right now we offer 8 to 10 week programs. Summer is obviously only 8 weeks. So we're utilizing the district partner facilities, and maybe we need to offer clinics and camps instead of offering leagues. So we are refocusing our energies and looking at how that strategy can be moving forward. And in adult sports category, we're looking at, this is a highly individual target goal, obviously, and you can see by the FY18 average at 74%, we have not hit our mark. That said, we also look at the trend for 100% average cost recovery programs become more difficult as cost increases occur. So our group has action strategy with our team is to focus on looking at the actual research of what players are using it, what sports they're using it for, where we can place them. Should we place them in our own facilities? Should we look at the third-party use facilities of our partners? And if not, maybe we look at eliminating those low participation programs.
With this slide, we literally ripped a page out of the Get Active brochure. Our special interest classes are anything from essential oils to Tai Chi to guitar to our ever popular Sustainable You program. Even old school games, yard games, are led, as Chris mentioned, some of the lead activities. The programming is diverse and very, very different. What we are recognizing, however, is that despite all that broad offerings, that some of the programs, that low participant programs have a significant financial and cost recovery impact. From the adults, we hope to have a highly individual return on that cost recovery. And from youth, we recognize the benefit of having more of a community impact by having kids engaged in those types of programs. So while it's relatively small in the overall budget aspect of the department, we continue to adapt and to make those hard calls, as Chris mentioned, in possibly canceling some programs. So if there's 9 and our cost recovery is 12, those 9 phone calls are difficult calls to make because that program just won't happen. So we need you to be aware of that.
We also have 3 wonderful facilities in the city, and those are in collaboration with the Peoria Unified School District on their school sites. And our aquatics programs are held there on a seasonal and annual basis, both with the school district and the city. They offer a variety of water skills and safety programs as a benefit to the community. The season also brings an opportunity for young people to begin their employment journey through their career. So we are teaching young future leaders a lifelong confidence builder, if you will. This division is also responsible for the maintenance of all pool facilities as for the district as well. You can see in our...
Excuse me, would you back up? Come on, say something about that slide.
The wonderful programs we put on at the pools, and obviously this was one of those, went off extremely well, and that's our staff. I mean, again, we keep talking about putting on programs. We put on events on a weekly basis, if not a daily basis, and this is one tremendous opportunity we had. with our
world-famous Olympian Michael Phelps was swimming in a Peoria pool,
Thank
teaching
you.
kids how to
Thank you.
swim, and through the Michael Phelps Foundation, really focusing on children who may have the need, where financial resources might be a barrier to learning how to swim. So we've got a great network of aquatics professionals throughout the state, and our connection with Michael Phelps was certainly phenomenal on that day.
It was
Is that what you were looking
worth
for, Mayor?
saying, wasn't it?
Definitely
Thank
was.
you.
Thank you.
So our aquatics program on our pyramid model is actually a FY18 producer at 50%. So our staff is looking at managing our seasonal costs. It's very high, obviously short season, young folks, swim lessons and lifeguards. Also, we're looking at the right scheduling of our pool operation hours. If we don't have open swim numbers, maybe we shutter a pool to rent, and maybe we move those open pool swim numbers to an adjacent pool. So these are great ideas and concepts, and we're looking to implement these in the season ahead. As we wrap up our dive into the review of fee-based programs, the Recreation Center may not come naturally to mind as a fee program. However, this facility is host to many unique and diversified program offerings. The facility acts not only as a host to some of those third-party programs, but also manages its own recreational programs, such as aerobics, personal training, and open gym rentals, as an example. We're in a competitive market industry and area, and we work towards, with many others as a community, to make that base recreational opportunity for all residents. The service area for the Recreation Center is about a 10-minute drive, and marketing the facility year-round is critical to maintaining the patrons we have and trying to attract new patrons. And as we all know, the Recreation Center is a melting pot of diversification, and also with the Veterans Memorial right out the back door, it offers a really group opportunity for everybody to come. So it's growing in influence, if it hasn't already, as a marker in our community. As you can see, the Recreation Center on our actual model cost recovery, we're at 49% for FY18. We have not hit the mark in revenue, and definitely are redirecting to try and grow our revenue opportunities at this facility. When comparing like facilities across the valley in the market fee studies, it varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction on how fully burdened costs are applied to program revenue goals. So some of our current strategies are to align our programming with youth and fitness program offerings. Part of our reorg, we moved our staff to the rec center. So our youth programs and our aquatic staff are actually housed now out of the Recreation Center, collaborating, thinking about programs and cross-connect with those programs at the rec center to the programs we currently offer. We also are looking at providing an opportunity for a variable pricing for different gym times when it's high intensity for use versus low intensity. And you'll see a request for an additional marketing the center year-round. We do a great job when it's New Year's because of the resolutions, but we really focus on, believe it or not, the Recreation Center is tucked off the street. So we need to look at marketing that on a more year-round basis.
So overall, Mayor and Council, as you see, real quick, 2 more slides. The overall fee-based programs, we've got a handful of recommendations. Staff have been absolutely amazing at debating and ironing out what are some ways that we can get better at offering this program. It's important to stress that within the policy standpoint of the allocation that you provide every year for us to do the recreation programs, we're hitting the mark there. But individual programs are what we're seeing this as an issue. So that's what we're diving a little deeper than what we typically might from a bottom bottom line budget aspect. So as we go through these different ideas, we're never going to stray from providing great customer service. We're never going to stray from focusing on the creativity, and we're going to continue to make that commitment to being responsive to our citizens. And we hope to be able to put that together and make some of these changes. We've got the right team. Very proud of the staff. Within the next couple of years, we're going to come back and be able to talk more specifically on some of this as well, if this is the type of information that you like to see. Any thoughts on our fee-based programs?
Yes, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to comment, first of all, on some of the programs that we're offering you know, as part of cultivating relationships in the Mesquite District, which is north of Happy Valley. Since we don't have a community center out there, a recreation center out there, it's been great that there's new partnerships that exist and we're able to offer services up there so it's more convenient for those citizens living up there. So I'm really proud of that and appreciate the effort. With regard to the different creative things that you're doing to determine cost recovery and what programs you may have to eliminate, just a suggestion when putting that out there and programs introduced and people go online and sign up, if they can be notified in advance of that we have to have a minimum number signing up to be able to keep this, to maintain this program. The reason I say that is because it has to make sense. I get that. I think the taxpayers would appreciate that. But there are parents out there, especially out in our area, that, will start making calls to other parents and say, we can drive on Wednesdays if you can drive on Thursdays and make those numbers to be able to offer those programs to their kids. They'll do that work for us because they really want to participate in a program that way. But just having that understanding going into it before introducing the idea to their kids and then afterwards saying, so. Just
Very
a suggestion,
well said,
but
Vice Mayor.
thank you.
If I may, Mayor and Council, I know in the interest of time, I'm going to wrap us up here quickly and pass it over. But when we look at these different recreation programs, and many of them that have fees, really there's 3 different options that we're going to have available that we're going to be exploring here over the next couple of years and bringing back to you from time to time. We can look specifically at the fee level. Do we have the right level, or do we have to increase that so that the general taxpayer isn't necessarily subsidizing in the spot? Should we look at programs that are underutilized, maybe look at them and reprogram them in ways that they are fully utilized? But it's also looking again at the policy levels themselves. If we are not realistic in that, then we'll bring that back to you. So when we look at these areas and these challenges, it does not mean an elimination in itself by any stretch. We would certainly work closely. The only items that would fall into that category is if they're underutilized at this point. So wanted to make sure that you were fully aware, because these are important issues and we want to make sure you have the best pulse of the community. We want to make sure when we make these decisions that you believe that we're on the right track on that. So with that, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Jeff. That's great information there and spot on. And so along that discussion, from an overall standpoint, we've thrown up some bullet points here of our summary. So with that, we want to focus, as always, on our principal strategy and taking care of the assets that we have. You'll see that, you have seen that in the way that we go for our budget requests, the way that we go out for grants, the way we partner with other agencies, private and government. We're going to operate always within that budget allocation. We've got a great team. We partner well with the budget department. And of course, through city leadership, they hold us to task. Distinguishing Peoria above all others. I think that through Parks and Recreation, it is indeed one of the best ways that we can make an investment. This team has been phenomenal at putting together the creative, the facilities to the programs and the assets. Very, very proud of this group, and very proud to call this my last sentence. Turn it over to you.
Thank you. All right, so thank you very much for what you do. It's a really complex facilities and organizations and assets that you guys handle, and we appreciate everything that you do.
Mayor, if you'd like it, we are at 6:35. We do have one more item scheduled. It is what we believe is a 5 to 10 minute presentation to just give an update with regard to the texting while driving ordinance discussion that we had, if you're amenable to that.
Yes, we can do it.
Great, we can do this.
We can do it.
Likewise. So we have coming up, of course, our City Attorney Vanessa Hickman, as well as our Intergovernmental Affairs Director, Thomas Atkins, that will present, and also from Communications, our Communications Manager, Tim Iden, to talk a little bit about proposed communication plan if and when that time comes.
Thank you.
Where is, may I borrow this? Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. We will keep this very brief in the interest of time. The purpose of tonight's discussion was I was asked in the fall to bring before you a draft ordinance for your review, which would prohibit texting while driving. We had a full briefing at that time and a great discussion at the study session. At that time, we discussed statistics pertaining to texting while driving and distracted driving. We discussed the language of the proposed ordinance, and at that time we were given direction to work with the Department of Communications and put together a communications plan, come back before you, discuss the communications plan, and have a further opportunity to have a dialogue on the subject. So as we worked with the Department of Communications on the communications plan, which we will give you a few minutes on that this evening as well, there were more and more public conversations that gave us the impression that there was activity at the state level and that there was actually interest in possibly doing something on the legislative front in the upcoming legislative session, which would regulate the use of cell phones while driving. If you recall, currently Arizona is one of only 3 states that does not have legislation regulating cell phone use for those 18 and over on a statewide level. So we will let Thomas talk a little bit more about what he's seeing at the legislature and kind of his read on that. But tonight I will give you a brief reminder of the ordinance Peoria is reviewing. Tim Iden will go over the communications plan, and Thomas will talk about the legislative front and the effect of action at the state level and what that could mean to municipal efforts moving forward. So again, by way of reminder, Peoria's ordinance would prohibit texting while operating a motor vehicle. It was not meant to be a hands-free ordinance. It was merely meant, again, to prohibit texting, manually entering alphanumeric information, so no social media, no gaming, those type of things which could distract you from what you should be doing, which is having your eyes on the road and focusing on driving. There were exceptions, making phone calls, answering, dialing, etc., using your virtual assistant, such as Siri and Google Assistant, and of course during emergencies or reporting of safety hazards or criminal activity. The enforcements and fines, it was a primary offense, which would give the police the ability to pull someone over for this and not have it as a secondary offense. $250 was the maximum penalty that is in the draft, and potential increased civil penalties for repeat offenses, so more than one time within a 12-month period. Messaging. As we were asked to do, we worked with the Department of Communications on a plan that we could use leading up to the time that the ordinance would be adopted, as well as implemented at the time of adoption of the ordinance. So I'm going to turn it over to Tim Iden to spend a few minutes discussing what the communications plan would look like.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I appreciate you having me. This is not possible without buy-in from the entire community. The primary focus of our messaging is going to be, one, educate the public on the specifics of this law and what they mean. There's some confusion, primary, secondary, and things along those lines. So education is important. And number 2 is creating buy-in. And that's the more difficult one. We need this to be something that everybody embraces, and we need this to be something that is a community-wide effort. So from public service announcements to press releases, social media, all of these things will be utilized, but we hope to do so in a very creative way. An example of that, we've had some success with live Q&As where we actually go live on Facebook and we bring several experts, if you will, from the city, and we answer questions for folks. If we bring in a police officer, maybe our youth liaisons, and some other experts, maybe from AAA, and we just open it up to the public and allow them to ask questions. That engagement is so important rather than us telling people, what this is going to be, but getting them involved. And that actually brings me to the last point on that slide is if we are going to create a initiative to ban texting, we need to lead by example. And that's everybody, including the city, teachers. We need to demonstrate that we too will not be using cell phones, leading by example. So it's a top to bottom, not just communications, but just getting that buy-in.
And Thomas is next to talk about the efforts at the state level now that the legislature is in full swing.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So 2019 has been a really active year on this topic. This isn't the first year that legislation has been introduced to address the issue of texting while driving, but this is the first year where it seems more likely than not that something will actually make it through the legislative process and get signed into law by the governor. So to kind of cover this, I've put together a matrix of the 5 bills that have been introduced to date on this topic. I've sorted them by the prohibited behavior, when that behavior is not allowed, and the maximum penalty for the first and second offense. I've also included the draft Peoria ordinance that Vanessa has discussed, so you can compare. The first 3 bills, and actually before I get into that, what I want to emphasize, these are all introduced pieces of legislation. This is very early in the legislative process. None of these bills have received a hearing in committee yet. It is highly likely that whatever makes it through the legislative process is probably going to be different than what was introduced. In fact, I was just made aware this morning that Senate Bill 1165 is likely to see a very significant amendment, perhaps a strike everything amendment, to mirror the Georgia hands-free legislation. So all of that is to say, what you see up here is what has been introduced. It is not necessarily what will get passed if anything gets passed. We're pretty sure the legislature is going to take up texting while driving, but then again, they may not. It's totally up to them. So getting to the bills, there's 5 bills that have been introduced to date. The first 3 bills under our ordinance really have to do with using a wireless communications device while operating a motor vehicle. These are the quote-unquote texting while driving bills. You'll notice they vary a little bit about when the behavior's allowed, the penalties, and even some of the exceptions that are there. The last 2 bills would fall more under the distracted driving scenario, and these really prohibit any behavior of the driver that might distract them from the road. And again, the penalties vary. One doesn't even have a penalty. So the key point is there's a lot happening at the state legislature, and it's unclear what exactly is going to pass. So a couple of points that I really want to emphasize and kind of put into context. So what does all of this mean for Peoria, and what does this mean in the context of an ordinance that we're contemplating? Well, for starters, it's more likely than not that the state will pass a law dealing with texting while driving or distracted driving. Not guaranteed, but I would say more likely than not, and then most capital observers are probably in agreement on that topic. Second, there's a strong possibility that any ordinance that we adopt might be preempted in some fashion by the new state law, if one is enacted. Third, if we enact an ordinance that conflicts with state law, we're going to need to thoughtfully consider any implications that could arise from that conflict. Specifically, it's generally in our best interest to have ordinances that work in sync with state legislation. Failure to adopt an ordinance that works totally in sync with state legislation could result in the need for the city council to come back and make changes to an ordinance that we've already adopted. As Tim discussed with his messaging and the outreach that could happen if we were to adopt an ordinance, if what we propose and enact in some way conflicts with state law and the council decides that they want to amend what has been passed, then we will have to sort of re-educate the citizens after we've already educated them. So in summary, if it's the direction of the council to adopt an ordinance that will fully comply with state law, it may be best to wait and see what that new law is. And at this point, we just don't know what that will be. Doing so helps ensure that we work in sync with the state law and that we have consistent and accurate information going out to our residents. So when will a new law be enacted? Short answer is we don't know. I could give you a really good ballpark that we should know if a new state law will get passed sometime around April or May, but it may not be till June. It depends how fast the legislature works and when they wrap up their session. So we just don't know, but we will probably know for sure by June, hopefully a month or two sooner. So in terms of next steps, what we're doing in intergovernmental affairs, and we are keeping a very close eye on what is happening at the state legislature. We obviously have a vested interest into seeing what gets adopted and how that plays out. But again, it is so early in the process now that none of these bills have yet received a hearing. So I couldn't bet for sure which one of those would make it through the process. And even if I bet and I knew which one had better chances than others, I couldn't guarantee you what exactly is going to be in that legislation. We just don't know until the governor signs that pen, signing it into law. So with that, I just wanted to give you an update. There's a lot happening at state legislature. It's more likely than not that state legislation on this topic will be enacted, and there's a good probability if that happens, that legislation would preempt local ordinances. And so that's just a kind of food for thought as we're working in conjunction with the Attorney's Office and everybody else on this ordinance.
Thank you. So it seems to make sense for us to wait till we see what happens at the state legislature. If they're going to enact something that we would need to re-educate our citizens on, that doesn't make much sense at all. So, Council, are you okay with us waiting until we find out what happens on a state level? All right, good. Well, thank you. Thank you all for everything that you've done so far. We will stay tuned.
Mayor,
thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. That is all we have for presentation.
All right, and with that, we are then adjourned until our 7 p.m. meeting.
Is a judge here? Here he is. I don't notice him without his black uniform. But anyway, I just want to mention that this is my sixth term. 6 terms on the city council. And 6 terms in the city council, the judge has sworn me in. And I'm still here. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Judge. Congratulations, everyone, and we will now take a short 15-minute break. The Peoria City Council meeting will now come back to order. And the clerk will please call the roll.
Mayor Carlett.
Here.
Vice Mayor Finn.
Still here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hunt.
Here.
Councilmember Patana.
Here.
Councilmember Binsbacher.
Here.
Councilmember Edwards.
Here.
Councilmember Leone.
Here.
Council Liaison Johnson.
Here.
And Council Liaison Gilbertson.
Here. Thank you, and good evening again. We will now proceed with the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine or have been previously reviewed by the City Council and will be enacted with one motion. Council, are there any items to be removed from consent? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Second. A motion and a second. Council, please vote. And the consent agenda passes unanimously. We will now move on to new business. And the first item on the agenda for new business, 12R, is the election of vice mayor. I'm going to read the rules of this election of vice mayor. Pursuant to Article 2, Section 8 of the Peoria City Charter, the City Council shall designate one of its members as vice mayor, who shall serve in such capacity at the pleasure of the council. The vice mayor shall perform duties of the mayor during his or her absence or disability. Vice mayors have previously been elected to serve either 1 or 2-year terms. At the January 9th, 2018 City Council meeting, Councilmember Michael Finn was elected as vice mayor to serve a 1-year term. An election for a new vice mayor
I was on a patrol on Easter in the front of my squad. I remember I looked forward, right there, I just saw it was a directional IED. I see the string coming off the back of it. And they blew it up, they set it off. One of my guys, I remember him yelling back at everybody else saying like, Hernandez is hit, he's bleeding out. I was scared, like I didn't know really what to think. It was I mean, the last thing I expected to happen that day was me end up being on a helicopter flying out from downrange.
When wounded warriors are brought home to the States, it's a journey of over 7,000 miles, made possible by a dedicated team of pilots, doctors, flight nurses and crew, medics, chaplains. The list is long and the care is unique for those who make sure our injured soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines make it back safely. It truly is a mission of mercy.
I'm going to be on this aircraft for the next 2 weeks, so I'm going to thoroughly check everything so I don't have to check it again. And also this aircraft's coming off of being at a FAR site for 2 weeks, so the medic that was on before me may not have been able to resupply stuff he was using. So I'm going to double check everything extra thoroughly. Our goal is to be off the ground here in 15 minutes, have the patient, we generally don't fly more than 15 to 30 minutes from this site, and then have them back at the FST within an hour getting surgical care. So if you get hurt in Afghanistan, you're pretty much guaranteed to get to a surgeon within an hour if we have anything to do with it.
As a pilot, as a PI, like we call it, I'll come out to the aircraft and get, myself and the crew chief will come out and we'll go ahead and get the aircraft run up all the way until engines start. The sense of urgency, I mean, it depends on what we've got coming down. You're always going to have the question of how severe are the patients. If it's a point of injury, like we have a lot here, you're always going to consider the landing zone, security of the landing zone, and the landing zone itself. Is it going to be dust landing? If it's a dust landing, how severe is the dust? What kind of sloping terrain may we be landing on? What other mitigations do we have to think about, such as if it's an IED blast, are there other IEDs out there? Are there mines if we're landing off the side of a road? There's all kinds of things that you have to run through your mind before you get out there. IED blasts predominantly here, so we do a lot of point of injuries, roadside. It's got a lot of different names to it, and local nationals stepping on landmines, local nationals having falls and things like that. You've seen how dark it gets here. Just imagine what it's like at the village with no street lights and all that kind of stuff.
It's a little harder. The conditions are a little rougher, especially at night. We're not able to use white light, and it's a little bit bumpier than the back of my ambulance, but we manage.
Everyone that I work with is top-notch. We have medics that I see them do things that's like, how do you do that in the back of a helicopter? We could be in, a 60-degree bank and they're putting tubes down someone's throat or putting a needle into someone's chest and, flying extremely fast, going through G-forces, and for them to be able to do that, it blows my mind.
You would burn out really quickly if every patient you treated in here, you took home with you at the end of the day. Because, there's days you pick up 7 patients and you find out 2 hours later that 3 of them died. And if you took that home with you every day, you'd never make it through the deployment.
The chance to save another person's life and make sure that they get home, see their family again, that's extremely rewarding. This is the best mission in the Army as far as I'm concerned.
We're going to put a warm blanket on it, okay? Get a blanket. Pull this out from under. You go ahead and pull this blanket out.
These guys are well trained and they do a great job. The medevac crew brings them in. We have a separate crew that unloads them from the helicopter. They bring them into the station area where they're initially screened, looked at, and they're brought into our ATLS area. That's where we do the major evaluation on them. And then from there, we can either take them to the operating room if we need to, or we take them a little further to what we call the ICU area, where we just watch them, observe them. And I think that's what
The Mayor and City Council welcome you to the Peoria City Council meeting. As a courtesy to others, please silence all phones. If you would like to address an issue that is on the agenda, or if you would like to speak to the Council regarding a non-agenda item, please complete a speaker request form, which can be found in the front lobby of the Peoria City Council chambers or in the tray to the left of the speaker's podium. Please place the completed speaker request form in the second tray to the left of the speaker's podium labeled Request to Speak. All speakers will have 3 minutes to complete their comments. A countdown clock is easily visible on the left side of the wall behind the City Council dais. Only items listed on the agenda may be addressed by the Council. Since items presented as part of a speaker's request have not been listed on the agenda, and due to the requirements of open meeting laws, the Council will be unable to respond to items presented as part of the speaker's request. However, please be aware that your comments will be noted. The speaker's name will be called to speak at the appropriate time, in the order that the forms were received. Thank you for your interest and participation in the Peoria City Council meeting.
The Peoria City Council meeting will now come to order. Please rise for a moment of quiet reflection and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Finn.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will please call the roll.
Mayor Carlett.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bensbacher.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hunt.
Here.
Councilmember Patana.
Here.
Councilmember Finn.
Here.
Councilmember Edwards.
Here.
Councilmember Leone.
Here.
Council Liaison Johnson.
Here.
And Council Liaison Gilbertson.
Here.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the Peoria City Council meeting of February 5th, 2019. The first item on the agenda this evening is the consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine or have been previously reviewed by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered in its normal sequence on the agenda. Council, are there any items to be removed from consent? Seeing none, is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Second.
A motion and a second. Council, please vote. And the consent agenda passes unanimously. We will now move on to the regular agenda and new business. We will begin with item 20R, Code Amendment, Chapter 21, Old Town Mixed Use Land Use Table. And I will turn it over to City Manager Jeff Tyne.
Great, thank you, Mayor. And Chris Hawkes, our Planning Director, will present information regarding land use within the Old Town Mixed Use Zoning District.
Great. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Item 20R, this is a proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance pertaining to the Old Town Mixed Use Zoning District. This amendment has been filed by the Planning Department on behalf of the city. And while the amendment at this juncture is limited to the use table, I wanted to point out that it was important for us to move this amendment forward quickly, as we've recently received some inquiries from businesses and other interested parties. So we wanted to make sure that this ordinance was responsive to the current needs. So this amendment is intended to accomplish two objectives. The first objective is just noting that the Old Town Mixed Use District was established about 15 years ago. So we want to make sure that the use table is responsive, but also we wanted to expand the palette of acceptable uses to respond to the kind of the new environment we're looking for in Old Town. And then secondly, anytime we open up a zoning code ordinance change, invariably there'll be things we want to clean up. So this is just an opportunity for us to do some housekeeping measures as well. And we're hoping with this change, along with all the other changes that we're going to be seeing in the days ahead in the Old Town, will help seed the momentum that we're beginning to see in this area and reposition it for future growth. So underpinning the Old Town Mixed Use District is the visioning and policy guidance that has been established over the years. So just to take you back a little bit, the Central Peoria Revitalization Plan was adopted by the council in 1998. That was the initial visioning and policy structure for Old Town. That document was then updated in 2009 as the Old Town Revitalization Plan. I can't believe it's been 10 years since we've adopted that document, but it just seems like a few years ago, but it's been in place for 10 years. So what that plan does is it provides a framework for Old Town. It sets the expectations for Old Town, and some of those expectations and vision statements include that Old Town be walkable, that it promote a mix of uses or mixed use to encourage activation of the streets, to enable people to live close to jobs and services, smooth out some of the peak times that we might see in other commercial areas that don't have residential in near proximity. And then also honor the area as the city's historic heart of the city and honor its character. And also that when redevelopment does occur, that it occurs in a manner that's consistent with the urban form that we expect. I call it a Main Street form. And what that means is that buildings are in scale with what's around there. So we have a height limitation of 3 stories. We also want buildings pushed to the street line to kind of enable and celebrate that walkability that we're looking for. And also that we not have auto-oriented uses like drive-through restaurants that might degrade the walkability and the character that we see in the area. So those are some of the things that underpin the policy structure that we adopted. And we think in summary, the policy structure over the years, it provides the framework to transform Old Town into the next hip, on-fleek environment in the Valley. And so this is something that, as I said, with some of the gathering momentum that we're starting to see, hopefully will transform this area. So now to just move on to the zoning aspect of this thing. Again, we're talking about the Old Town Mixed Use Zoning District. As I mentioned, it's been in place for 15 years. This replaced what was previously called the C3 or the Central Commercial Zoning District. And in a minute, I'll show you a map because what the Old Town Mixed Use District does is it breaks up Old Town areas, we know it, into 2 areas. One, which we call core commercial, and that is principally the areas you would expect along 83rd and Washington that are commercial focused. They might have some residential uses that are intermixed with them, but they're predominantly commercial areas. And then some of the outlying areas that we call core residential, where it's a residential focus, but there are businesses within that. So if you think perhaps like a Catlin Court type of environment in Glendale, that's the type of scenario that sub-area includes. So in a minute, what I'll talk about is the land use table and some of the highlights that we're proposing and how those standards respond to some of the policy guidance. All right, so what you're looking at is the zoning map for the area. And let me orientate you a little bit. So when we talk about the Old Town core, principally what we're talking about is Grand Avenue is the eastern edge of that. Monroe Street is the southern edge of that, 85th on the west, and Peoria Avenue on the north. So if you look at the areas in the dark red, that's CRM, that's what we call core residential mixed use. Those are the areas that are today all single family homes. Again, it does have the zoning structure for not only residential use of those properties, but for some limited commercial, with residential being the principal and primary use of that property. And then the areas you see in orange, again, this aligns with the commercial corridors. Again, that's the retail, service businesses, kind of that commercial focus. So that shows you the 2 sub-areas of the Old Town mixed-use districts. So now we're going to talk about some of the changes that we're proposing to the land use table. So I'll go through, these are some of the highlights that are in your attachment there. I'll go through some of those. We made a cleanup. We clarified that restaurants and I should back up and mention that these changes I'm showing on the screen are for the core commercial part of the Old Town mixed use. So we want to clarify that restaurants are certainly permitted. We want to see restaurants in Old Town, but not a drive-through function. We think that's not consistent with the character for Old Town. We also added indoor recreation and entertainment. Curiously, we already permit indoor theaters as we have one out there, so it's not a far leap to also permit indoor recreation and entertainment as they kind of behave and function the same way. We wanted to clarify that microbrewery, we don't have any there today, but it's a kind of a new budding use that we're seeing around the country. We want to make sure that that's very clear that it's permitted there. Hotel, motel. There were some personal services that I was surprised as we were going through the table that weren't currently permitted, like beauty shops and tanning salon. Those are certainly things you would expect in an Old Town environment. We also added the tattoo body piercing studio. Now, this is a use that's allowed currently citywide. It's subject to a use permit. It's also subject to separation criteria. When I say separation, means it's got to be 1,000 feet from another tattoo parlor or another pawn shop or a certain list of specified uses. So this just makes Old Town uniform with the rest of the city and how we treat this use. We've removed single-family residential. Certainly, we allow it in the CRM, the residential mixed-use portion, but you can imagine where you have an area, a core commercial, where it's supposed to be business-focused. We want some integration of residential. We wouldn't want a single-family home to supplant a piece of property that maybe could be a mixed-use building or a commercial business. So we wanted to make sure that that part was removed from core commercial. And then the other one was to remove the restriction for bar tavern uses within 200 feet of residential. So if you recall a few years ago, 2012, we adopted an entertainment district for Old Town. So that means we looked at liquor licenses on a case-by-case basis, but you can imagine, just given the proximity of some of the residential, we wouldn't have any of those types of uses there. So this removes that restriction, allows us to look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Chris, just a second. Councilmember Hunt?
Just real quickly while we're still on this, under microbrewery and distillery, would that also include like a wine bar? I'm not sure what the distinctions are. I just know that that is a different kind of, that would be included on this though.
Mayor Pro Tem Hunt, absolutely. And so what we try to do is, if something is not specified, we'll look for the most analogous or closely associated use. I would put that in that category, yes.
Okay, you don't feel it's necessary to actually name it? You don't think there's going to be a problem later on?
Mayor Pro Tem Hunt, we could certainly name it, but I think what we'll do, when we look at the function of it, we look at how it behaves, the operation, I think it operates probably very closely to what you would expect at a microbrewery.
Okay.
So we would look at that.
I think it does too. I just wanted to make sure we didn't end up with a little stumbling block there.
Absolutely.
And then on the tattoo, we're still leaving the 1,000 feet in there?
Mayor Pro Tem Hunt, that is still there. So we treat them the same as we would any other facility around the city.
Okay, I just thought that was a problem right now that we were trying to iron out.
Mayor Pro Tem Hunt, yeah, there is a solution to that issue. So
okay, perfect.
This doesn't get in the way of that.
Okay, great. And I'm a little surprised that we're adding tanning salon, massage establishment.
Mayor Pro Tem
Whose
Hunt,
idea
I
was that?
yeah, I was surprised that those uses weren't in the use schedule. I would, normally you would see that in an Old Town environment.
Oh, you think they should have been there to begin with? And-
Beauty shops, tanning salons. I think you normally see those types of studios.
Okay. Okay. That's good. That's fine. I will have to use discretion.
Oh, okay.
Just say it.
Some other highlights to core commercial mixed use. So we remove some obsolete terms. We have video rental store, right? I think I read there's still one left in the country in Bend, Oregon. If you want to go see the last Blockbuster, there it is. It's in Bend, Oregon. But, watching, clock repair, dressmaking, not to say that those uses aren't still permitted, they are, but they would be contained in a different category description that we already have, so we just removed some old terms. Recycling collection point as a use, we already have pickup service, as we know. We clarified that appliance sales and rental also includes a repair portion of that as well. And when we talk about dry cleaning and laundry establishment, that also means there could be a self-service option as well. So those are some of the changes to that. I did want to point out one change to the core residential mixed use, okay? I passed out a memo. I'll briefly describe that. So I mentioned that core residential mixed use is principally residential focused with some limited commercial opportunity. So in the code as it exists today, we do allow coffee shops, less than 2,000 square foot without a drive-through in CRM, okay? So as we cleaned up this part of the code, we collapsed the term coffee shops into restaurants because they're the same thing, right? And so in our changes, I think we did an oversight. We inadvertently took out restaurants less than 2,000 square feet out of the CRM district. So all we're doing is giving you an updated ordinance that replaces it there. So that's all that change is there. We took this to the Planning Commission on January 17th. We didn't have any speakers, and the commission was very supportive and unanimously recommended approval of this case. So key findings here. Again, we believe with a more expansive schedule, it repositions the Old Town area, provides new business opportunities. The refinements are always welcome for those of us that implement the code, and we believe it's an overall benefit for the Old Town mixed-use area. And with that, Mayor and Council, the recommendation is to concur with the Planning Commission and adopt the new ordinance amending the land use matrix with the change I just noted previously with the CRM district. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Council, are there any questions for Mr. Hawkes? Councilmember Hutt?
Well, Chris, this really looks good, and it kind of does feel like we just did this a short time ago, but it also feels like a very long time getting from there to here. And I'm thrilled with this because you guys have listened and you've been malleable to the new needs. What I think we even said back then, people said, well, what do you want? And we said, we don't know, but we'll know it when we see it. And I think we're meeting the needs of not only the community, but of the users that want to come here. And they are many right now. We'll have to build the place for them. But these are definitely all the uses that we want that are compatible in the Old Town that we're trying to build or rebuild, as it were. So I think you guys did a great job, and mostly thank you for listening to all the participants that had input on this. Thank your staff, please.
Is there a motion there?
Yes, I move that we concur with Planning and Zoning on the recommendation to adopt Ordinance 2019-04, amending the matrix for Old Town mixed-use zoning.
Thank you. Is there a second?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. And it passes unanimously. Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is call to the public for non-agenda items. If you wish to address the City Council, please complete a speaker request form and place it in the bin next to the speaker's podium. Because of the requirements of the state's open meeting law, the City Council is not authorized to discuss or take action on any issue raised by public comment until a later meeting when it can be on the formal agenda. And I do have one speaker request form. Lydia Quartermont, if you would please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Yes, my name is Linda Quartermont. And what was the other question you wanted me to answer?
Address?
Address, 9608 West Sunny Slope Lane, Peoria. Yes, I'm here to speak about the texting while driving. Mm-hmm. After hearing the gentlemen and women up here from the
study session
legislatures, I was deeply concerned that our city of Peoria is willing to wait another month, another year. We don't know. And it seemed very obvious to me that we don't know when the state might put together something to put into law. In the meantime, Clayton Townsend's family didn't get a law put in time for his family. It could be you, it could be me tomorrow. Every day I commute on the 101 freeway, and I'm confronted with a distracted driver, perhaps going slow, maybe under the speed limit, thinking they're being safe. Meanwhile, what's going on behind them, we don't know if they're coming over in our lane because they're coming close to the line without a signal. Maybe they want to turn into my lane. I don't know. I'm really confronted with this on a daily basis, and I'm sure most of you see the same thing. Please don't wait for the state to put a law. If we follow along with what Glendale and what El Mirage have done already. I think that the state sees the urgency for them to do something a little quicker. We could be waiting another 6 months. Please don't do that. Please reconsider following what perhaps Glendale has put together. I'm sure that they have lawyers that have already seen what they might have to do. They might have to re-meet for a council meeting. I mean, that really wouldn't take that much time. The state would supersede what the city of Peoria would put together anyway. I urge you, please don't wait for another person to lose their life. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We will now move on to reports from City Manager, Mr. Tyne.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And I have two items tonight. The first is a very special employee recognition that we wanted to go through. And so I wanted to ask that we have our Fire Chief, Bobby Reese, and our Water Services Director, Tammy Shreve, allow for a presentation and recognition for our Utility Systems Operator 2, Tom Rattler.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, Mr. Tyne. The Water Services Department has dedicated employees that work hard to provide our residents, our customers, with really quality water and to serve their needs. And every once in a while, you have an employee that stands out, that does something extraordinary. And I want to introduce you to that employee. This is Tom Rattler. Tom is a Utility Systems Operator 2 in the Field Services Department in the Distribution Division. Tom went up and beyond his daily work duties when he stepped in and helped an individual that was in an emergency situation. On December 20th, 2018, Tom was in his work truck. He was at the intersection of 75th and Golden Lane when he noticed a lady with a cell phone on the side of the road waving frantically, trying to get someone's attention. Tom pulled over his truck, got out of the truck, and as he approached the lady, she's pointing to the back seat of her car. In the back seat of the car is a man unconscious and not breathing. Tom, remembering his life-saving training that he had been taught, called 911, started cardio chest compressions, and then with the support of the 911 operator, he continued the compressions until the man opened his eyes and gasped for air. Shortly thereafter, the paramedics arrived, provided services, and took the individual to a hospital. We want to recognize Tom tonight. He's an exemplary employee, and he used his knowledge combined with his heart to serve our community member. And we think highly of him, and I wanted to get them the recognition that he deserved. And Chief Reese has a few words too, and something special to present him.
Thank you. Tammy approached me and nominated Tom Rattler for an award. And with that, and she just told you all about it, is we want to present Tom Rattler with the life-saving award for the great deed that he did. If it wouldn't have been for your service and your actions, this individual wouldn't have had life today. So we thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all for taking the time to make a presentation to him, for bringing him to us at the City Council tonight, and for allowing us to put it on TV so that all of our residents can see what a great employee you are and what a lifesaver. Thank you.
One last item we have a 2-minute video that features the upcoming events for the city, including at spring training at the Peoria Sports Complex, Parfest at Skunk Creek Trailhead, and Bravo Peoria at Sunrise Mountain Library and Camino Al Lago Park. So we'll show you that real quick.
I look forward to spring training every year because of the weather, the amenities here, the ballpark, but best of all, the fans. It's one of the friendliest complexes around.
Here's the pitch and a line drive right to second. He delivers the sinker, swinging a liner off the glove of the first baseman.
I love the park. I love the people. I love the ball players. It is a fantastic place.
Thank you, Mayor. That's all I have.
Nice video. Okay, we will now move on to reports from the City Council, and we'll begin with Youth Council Liaison Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. On January 30th, I attended the Peoria Neighborhood Day at Legislator with some members of the City Council and some engaged Peoria citizens at the state capitol. I learned a lot about state government that I really didn't know, and I found it to be a fascinating, informative event. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Patena?
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of weeks ago, the mayor and I attended an awards ceremony for the Luke Air Base 56th Fighter Wing. There were many awards given out that evening, including Airman of the Year. I want to tell you about one of the things that I noticed was how many people actually approached our mayor for an opportunity to talk with her about the city of Peoria. Not only civilians, but also military people approached her. Brigadier General Canterbury stepped by, and also a retired general as well. It's interesting how knowledgeable they were about Peoria. Obvious to me that our mayor's hard work and leadership make us relevant in the West Valley. We are a player. So thank you, Mayor. Last week, I attended the opening of the Blooming Spire located at Happy Valley and Lake Pleasant Parkway. Vice Mayor Binsbacher gave an inspiring speech about artwork in our community and the role it plays in livability. It's an amazing piece of art, and I hope you all have an opportunity to see it very soon. This past weekend, the mayor, along with the vice mayor, Councilmember Edwards, and myself, attended Benevia's biggest fundraising event at the Wigwam. It was a very nice evening. Many of you may know that we have a long-standing relationship and partnership with Benevia. It's a great organization, and they do so many great things for elderly people. Last Tuesday, myself, along with other council members, and three other citizens who were interested in government got to go to the Peoria Day at the legislature. All three of them, interesting enough, called me or texted me to let me know what a great time they had. Thomas and Jenna put on an amazing performance for us. It was a very interesting day. It goes from 10 o'clock till 2. We get to see, we had some legislators actually come in and talk to us, and we got to see how they work and the things that they do and how a bill happens and doesn't happen. It was quite an interesting day, so thank you, Thomas and Jenna. I would like to mention that Karen Halstead, my council assistant, retired last Thursday. In my time as a councilman, I have been blessed with three amazing council assistants, Brianna Decker-Cortinas, Anthony Alejandro, and Karen Halstead. These positions are critical to the success of council members, and I always appreciate what they do on a daily basis. My new council assistant is Daniel Murillo. He comes with high expectations. I'd like to welcome Daniel, and I know that he will do a great job. And also Linda Blas, our deputy city clerk, also retired. We want to wish Karen and Linda good luck in the second half of their life. And finally, congratulations to Tom Rattler for acting so quickly. I would expect that from any of our employees because that's the way they're trained. But Tom, you must have a very special feeling in your heart that you had a chance to save a life. Not many of us have that opportunity. You get to have that the rest of your life. So thank you very much, and we appreciate what you did. And that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Finn?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd also like to congratulate Tom on those actions. That's a great story. Thank you for what you did out there. And the second part of this is going to be painful, but I have to congratulate Carlo and his Patriots on the Super Bowl win. That's really hard for me to congratulate the Patriots on a win, but got to do it. Congratulations. That's all I have.
Vice Mayor Binsbacher?
Thank you, Mayor. I want to congratulate Tom as well. Congratulations. That's just an unbelievable story.
You beat me.
You made us proud and, did something incredible for our family, and it's just service beyond what we can imagine. Thank you. Peoria Neighborhood Day, too. I want to thank Thomas and Jenna for that Academy Award-winning performance that Bill referenced. In all honesty, that was year number 2, and it went from here to here. It was well attended. The youth was there, and all different folks from different parts of our city there, really interested in learning about what happens and how legislation is passed, and some time and Q&A with our legislators, which was really interesting. And but you all did such a great job of organizing that and facilitating all of that discussion and activity and doing a real solid presentation that I think was very valuable to the citizens. And I was really proud. Peoria just looked like a great city, really wanting to invite their citizens in to learn about how all of this works. So thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing that happen year after year because it was time well spent. And the feedback was tremendous. I want to say about the Blooming Spire, a beautiful, iconic sculpture in the northern part of our city. And what's so amazing is it is beautiful. If you haven't seen it, you need to see it. But as our city grows, the commitment to art is growing with it. And I think that is really important, and it's creating our identity, and it's been very well received. I think once it lit up, people really, really started to appreciate it, and it's absolutely beautiful. But what I got, and Mayor, maybe you remember, the artist's wife was talking about, and he's done art all over the world, and she said that it was no easy task being selected to put art in your city because of your process, because of all of the steps that you have to go through to be selected, and how you engaged the community and made them part of the process. So you can see from the different activity on social media and feedback that I've gotten, art evokes a lot of different emotion, and it should. But I feel so good about the process that we went through, that we will continue to go through as we select different art for our city. And this is just one step towards another, and I'm really proud of this historical moment. So get by there and see it. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor. Tom, congratulations on your award. It's truly inspiring to hear your story, and thank you for being there to save that life. It's an honor to know you and to have you represent the city of Peoria, so thank you. Vice Mayor, you're absolutely right. The Blooming Spire is just a beautiful piece to the north part of our city. You can see that thing from, I believe, miles away. As I was coming across 83rd Avenue going west on Happy Valley, as soon as you turn on and start to go up the hill, you can see the makings of the beautiful colors as you come up the hill, and it's just a beautiful piece of artwork. So you did an inspiring speech, and it was a pleasure to be there to represent the city. I too attended the neighborhood day, and Thomas and Jenna, you guys did a phenomenal job. I want to thank our representative, Senator Rick Gray and David Livingston for being there, also Kevin Payne, Frank Carroll, Ben Toma, and our own local Peoria resident, Sergeant of Arms, Chuck Fitzgerald, was there as well. And so what I got most out of it is the transparency in government. They were open to any question that a resident had. They were open to give their phone numbers, their email addresses, and I heard it time and time again that this is your House and this is your Senate, and you're welcome here anytime because we want to hear from our public. And so I just want to thank you for giving the residents an opportunity to have that experience. So thank you so much. And then lastly, last week I had the opportunity to do a lunch at the council over at Great Hearts Prep and Glendale Prep. And again, the students and of this great city are just never cease to amaze me. We talked about civic engagement. We talked about public transportation and different modes of transportation. We had some discussions about our recent Bird. We talked about the scooter or the Lime bikes over in Scottsdale. And so it was just really refreshing to hear some discussion from the youth of Peoria. So I look forward to, at our next meeting, it'll be over at Kellis High School next month. And so I look forward to some more discussions with our youth. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hunt.
Thank you, Mayor. Gosh, Tom, I know you're getting tired of all the thanks, right? But I can't help it that I sit on this end. Thank you so much. And you saved a life. Like somebody said, we don't all get an opportunity to do that. And while we're congratulating you, I just want to point out what a great group you work with, our public service employees. You guys, sometimes you're just really not recognized. And the city runs on what you do. We may not recognize you if you're doing your job, but boy, let you not do your job and everybody's going to be up in arms. So thank you to each and every one of you, and those of you especially that are members of AFSCME, for all your philanthropic work. But just as a whole, we just have the best city service workers. This is the second that I can remember time that one of you has stepped forward, the gentleman who went through the whole garbage truck to find the lady's wedding ring. I mean, that's another thing that most of us don't get an opportunity to do in our lifetime, and I'm thankful for that. Anyway, thank you very, very much. Last night I attended Arizona Broadway Theater's Donor Appreciation Night, and what a fun time. It was just lively, and they announced their what will be their 15th season, which is 2020. 8 new Broadway musicals that they'll be performing. And so I want to take that opportunity. We've already talked about the arts here tonight, and I'm just so thankful that our city is embracing the arts. I've been tooting that horn for, I don't know, 40 years. I know I'm not that old, but maybe that's an exaggeration. 35 years. And we just know how important they are, and certainly the performing arts are also important. So while you attend Arizona Broadway Theater or our own Theater Works, our Center for the Performing Arts, get out there and see a play. Take your kids. Theater Works does so much in children's programming. I also attended, I don't know what night it was, we've been really busy this week, the opening of Discount Grocery Store right here just across the tracks. I still consider it Old Town, where the Albertsons was 20 years ago when I actually moved downtown. It's Discount Grocery. They're kind of a cross between, or you can go in and buy 1 box of cereal or 1 bag of chips for your lunch. Their prices are amazing. So if you have not discovered it, there's State Trailer, Final Clearance, and then Discount Grocery. The big sign, you can see it. And they're really nice people in there. Saturday night, I think, I attended the Barbecue Throwdown down here in Old Town. And by the way, legislator Kevin Payne runs a food truck in his spare time when he's not legislating. And I purchased from his truck, and it was really, really good stuff. If you're not keeping up with everything that's going on in Old Town, you're missing really a lot. 3 weekends or 3 weeks out of 4, Mary Lou Stevens puts together music on the park or music in the park, and it's out in the open. It's wonderful. We're blessed with such good weather here, so bring a blanket and come and listen to whatever it is. A couple of public service announcements now. Driftwood Coffee is undergoing a wonderful addition, and that is a big patio in front. You all know where Driftwood Coffee is, I'm sure. Most of the time, you cannot get a seat in there because, I'll just say millennials, that's what they look like to me, are all in there with their computers, and they're sitting everywhere drinking coffee. It looks like it's closed now. It is not. I don't want the new patio construction to hurt their business in any way. So you have to go around and enter on Jefferson and beware of all the fencing and the blind spots. Also, we have a free little library that I hope all of you are going and using. Take a book, good condition, that you've enjoyed, leave it there and take another book with you. And our Peoria Public Library, Maine, is supplying it and keeping it up and keeping it maintained. Tomorrow, I judge a patriotic speech contest at Peoria Elementary. I love getting in there with those kids, just like John does. And I think that might be it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Leone.
Yes, thank you. Just want to remind you that February 16th, 2 weeks from now, we're going to have a shred-a-thon at Altaloma. So if you want to get rid of some of your papers that you had for years, now's the time to do it. I did also want to thank Finn for mentioning the Patriots, but you know, I've been watching them for 100 years, ever since Bay Pirelli, but you know, it's the worst game I ever seen. And you know, that's not the funny part. The funny part is, when I turn my TV on, the kickoff went, and my TV went plop. So I never did get to see the game, but my daughter called me up in California every quarter to tell me what the score was. So God bless each and every one of you, and God bless America.
Thank you. Youth Council Liaison Gilbertson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to update the council on the Youth Advisory Board, and I'm excited to share that we're working with Organization Bloom 365, which is a dedicated nonprofit to educate youth how to identify abusive relationships and seek help, and I'm excited to see what we can do with them.
Thank you. They are a great organization, teaching about domestic violence before it occurs. What a great concept. So, Mr. Rattler, our hat is off to you. As you have heard, we thank you very much for making Peoria proud. And with that, we are adjourned.
Bill, you good? Easy.
Well, that day, he also had a job.